Chapter 501, Demon-like Judge of Fire 1. You have forcefully entered the final arc. Jiang Huiwen was greeted by the swarm of constellations as soon as finding herself inside the arc. You have entered the hot Naraka. She couldn't make heads nor tails of what on earth was going on here. Why did it have to be hell of all places? Did I commit a lot of sin in my past life? There was no mistaking the fact that the enemies before her eyes were aiming for her life, though. Jiang Huiwen discovered the pot-bellied but emaciated, starving ghosts tripping over each other and rushing towards her like falling mountains, and urgently shouted out, "Uriel!" There was no reply, but Uriel's blessing was still permeating within her. As white wings grew out from Jiang Huiwen's back, crimson corona permeated within her entire frame. Hour of Judgment is activating. The moment she swung her sword, the swarm of starving ghosts before were completely swept away. Evil-leaning constellations have picked up your scent. Enemies rushed in without an end. The ones found in this hot Naraka seemed to be parasitic creatures of other worldviews. Fortunately, she wasn't alone in this place. Huiwen SSI. Yihyeonseong hurriedly ran up to her location from somewhere and stood back to back with her. "I guess you've committed a lot of wrong yourself, Hyunseong SSI. Demon King, ruler of Crimson Fog, is glaring at you. Demon King, monstrous armed duke, is revealing its animosity towards you. Constellation, Hell's parasite, is observing you. Constellation, Flame of Muspelheim, is patiently waiting. Their magical energy would eventually run out trying to fend off all these starving ghosts. Not only that, Hell's constellations and demon kings were waiting for an opening to strike, as well. Behind you." Before they realized it, a swarm of starving ghosts sneaked closer from her rear and pounced with their large maws wide open. However, a cannon shell aiming at these creatures flew in from somewhere and blew them away. Huiwen Iane. It was from Yi Jaihai's battleship. Jiang Huiwen's complexion brightened as she shouted out, "Are the kids with you?" "I think they were dropped somewhere near Sangha and Clhwa Iani's vicinity. As for Pildu Ajasi, we don't have the time to worry about him too." Jaeok. More and more of Hell's denizens appeared. The demon counts they fought back in the Dark Castle, and Duke-level demons they encountered back in the demon world, also began making their appearances as well. Every one of them had become a part of this Hell, to be used as subjects for the next scenario. An archangel. Kill them, and we can also acquire the positions of demon kings. Yi Jaihai's bombardment towards them commenced. All the cannons in the turtle dragon spat out flames, causing the Hell's terrain to transform and lava to spew out uncontrollably. Demons struck by the bits and lumps of lava all melted down, but their numbers didn't seem to decrease at all. Applicable worldview is a domain ruled by evil. Individuals thought to be dead were rising back up again a few minutes later. The spooked Yi Jaihai hurriedly shouted out, "General Nim, where are you? Why aren't any constellations showing up here?" Unfortunately, no constellation replied to her calling. Not even Uriel, maritime war god, nor the 999th turns Yihyeonseong. They now had to rely only on their own strength to fight. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. It was then sparks began dancing in the air. Bayat. A roundish portal opened up and Biyu popped out from there. Biyu. She used to be no bigger than a soccer ball, but now she had grown so big that it was difficult to wrap one's arms around her. All Dakibus grow up by eating fables. Biyu yelled out Bayat and curled up as powerful sparks exploded out from her figure. Those dancing sparks then tore open a wall of the cabin. Dujujujado. Shells burst out of the automated turrets, emerging from the torn-open wall. "Are you all right?" Gong Pildu's moving castle was there. His armed fortress now boasted a scale of a complete battle-ready castle after his stigma had evolved once more. And on top of this fortress were Yu Sangha, Yi Clhwa, as well as the two kids. "Iani, Ajasi, come up this way." Jiang Huiwen and Yihyeonseong grabbed Yi Xiaochua's offered hands and jumped up towards the top of the fortress. Meanwhile, Yi Jiahai's longsword gleamed dangerously towards the starving ghosts madly chasing after them by climbing up on the fortress's walls. In a world where no light from the stars could illuminate them, the members of Kim Dakya Company rescued their own by themselves. Let's get started. Through the authority of the Lotus Pedestal, Yu Sangha began restricting the enemy's movements. In the meantime, Yi Jiahai and Gong Pildu continued to fire away. The Chimera Dragon sat on the far edge of the fortress and fired its breath at the constellations approaching from the air. As for the enemies that managed to break through this pandemonium and climb up successfully, they were greeted by Jiang Huiwan's falling sword strikes. Yi Hyunseong's steel transformation protected the skins of his companions, while Yi Xialhwa treated him as he got injured instead of them. This combination had been dreamed up by a certain person a long time ago. However, there was one boy who didn't appear in the original story. Alia. Wall that divides good and evil is exercising its authority. Constellation, ruler of the deepest pit, is bringing its own subordinates. Sujachachu. A pitch-black swarm of locusts rushed in and blanketed the skis of hell. These creatures latched onto the incarnation bodies of the demons reviving from their deaths and began tearing into them. Aoaku. Demons cried out in despair as they fell into the eternal cycle of their regenerating flesh, painfully, getting ripped apart and devoured repeatedly. Jiang Huiwan's eyes shone in the light of hope as she observed the strengths of the starving ghosts declining gradually. The one-sidedly disadvantageous battle situation was slowly but surely turning on its head. Although destroying this hot Naraka would still be asking for too much, at the least, buying enough time seemed quite possible. The only problem right now had to do with the constellations that hadn't joined the battle yet. Sujachachu. It was then, the stars filling up the skis of this hellish landscape suddenly began moving towards a certain direction. Constellations pounded on the interior wall of the hot Naraka and destroyed it before streaming outside through there. Once the lights from the constellations disappeared, the balance of the worldview also collapsed as well. The starving ghosts could no longer recover and sunk back inside the abyss of hell itself. The companions finally got to take a breather and stared at each other. What just happened? Yi Xialhwa asked that question, but no one answered back. One thing was for sure, though, an event humongous enough to make those stars lose interest in this place was happening somewhere right now. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Gong Pildu next. He groaned loudly and began driving his armed fortress. Fine, I got it, so stop egging me on. Kim Dakya Company too followed after those stars and began moving. Constellations flooding out from all corners of the final arc were flying towards a certain cabin as if they were being sucked in by a black hole. This was their first time seeing so many stars move like that. Even Jiang Huiwan, Yi Hyunseong, and Yu Sangha too. None could tear their eyes away from this overwhelming spectacle of every star in the sky raining down. It was at once beautiful and rather chill-inducing too, and also sorrowful. By the time they abruptly woke up, they realized that all these stars were swirling around a single star in the center. The side of the room could be seen through the large crack in the wall. The Shindansu had broken past the heavens, and with that tree as their center, Kim Dakya's stars were engaged in a bitter struggle. Stop them, this is our Hwangsanbyal. They were the Korean Peninsula's constellations. Kim Yushin, having lost his arm, was shouting out, and Jayabik was swinging his greatsword towards the constellations. The bald general of justice exterminated the enemies with his club, while one stroke of brush strengthened the allied constellations' statuses by writing in midair with his brush. Josian's #1 sorcerer morphed into a gigantic tiger to fight against Mithra and its turtle, while the slumbering lady of fine brocade summoned all of her Hwarangs to defend against the Emperor's forces. There was an unfamiliar constellation among them, too, a star with its eyes closed in the center of this tree. The Shindansu's fable was bubbling up with him as its core. Constellation, virtuous Wangyam, is gathering the probability of the founding gods. It seemed that he was one of the Korean peninsula's founding gods. His blessing enveloped Kim Dokya and the Korean peninsula's constellations and protected them. General Nim. They could also see constellations atop the turtle ship as well. The sight of the rolling ocean, brought to reality through stage transformation, that's where Yi Jaihai's constellation sponsor was. Today reminds me of that day on Noryang. It's my honor to fight alongside you, Junjeong. It is mine as well. The blade of menacingly growling Chiak Junjeong collided with Thor's hammer. Unfortunately, the Asgard's forces were simply too many for this small group to fight against. Constellation, Flame of Muspelheim, is summoning its greatsword. Eventually, even the constellations coming from the same hell as Jiang Huiwan began joining in as well. No matter how excellent both Chiak Junjeong and Yi Sun Shin were as constellations, it was still impossible for them to stop all of them. But then a light flashed from the Shindansu, and some things began growing on the ends of its branches. The lights then descended like ripened fruits, containing people the companions were intimately familiar with. It's our great masters. Powerful auras of white lightning, as well as sword light of breaking the sky, dyed the battlefield. Then, Jang Haiyong and the Transcenders from Murim began roaming the battleground as well. They were followed by Japanese Yaokai constellations rushing in. Tengus, grasping feathered fans, and Kappas rose up from beneath the water. Even the subordinates of Yamada no Orachi could be seen as well. You bunch of weak incarnations dare to. Fruits endlessly fell from the Shindansu. Among the spreading white lightning dyeing the battlefield bright, the beings from the sixth scenario began appearing next. For Kim Dojia, they were small people from Peaceland. Those that fought together with them against the calamity were descending to this battlefield to help them out. Small constellation from the small planet is pulling out its sure-kill weapon, Dragon Needle. Every time constellations, swords moved, the small people died in their droves. None of the companions could speak at the horrifying spectacle of the cabin, and at the center of this battlefield, the brightest star on the middle of the mountain made out of dead stars also didn't speak a word either. Kim Dokya on top of the destroyed absolute throne maintained his silence. Yu Younghyuk, Han Soo-yong, and Anna Croft were all fighting there. They were giving their all to fight against constellations while vomiting out blood, scraping every fable they could, and squeezing out every ounce of willpower they possessed. The sky was rapidly changing from the collision of worldviews. Asgard's Odin, Papyrus S. Osiris, Veda's S. Shiva, Emperor S. Nuwa. Not just them, but constellations from nebulas with unfamiliar names all joined in, causing the sky to brighten up in the deluge of blinding light show. What blocked light wasn't darkness, but another light. The companions subjected to this chokingly bright world felt as if their very existences were being denied. The starlights from the constellations were telling them this, that the history they had compiled so far was nothing. Great fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. Jiang Huiwan also knew. She knew that those beings couldn't be defeated even if all of her companions jumped in right now. Great fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, has begun its storytelling. She needed an even stronger fable, one that could strike down all those blinding stars, the kind of power that could destroy all those constellations. However, Jiang Huiwan didn't possess such powers. Even with God slaying or hellfire, it was still impossible. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is looking at her own incarnation. Jiang Huiwan looked up at the sky. Her sponsor that had been keeping silent until then was there. She really liked her sponsor, and because of that, there were certain things she felt scared of asking for the Archangel's help. Kim Dokya. Even then, Jiang Huiwan had to say it. Please rescue him, Uriel. Right away, her sponsor replied back to her. All right. Hotly burning flames blanketed the surroundings. She sensed Uriel standing right behind her. Without a doubt, the Archangel must have been using her uniquely noble eyes to look at the same world Jiang Huiwan was looking at. Suddenly, Jiang Huiwan was overcome with fear. What if Uriel dies in this place? Uriel was just a fable-grade constellation. Even if she was very powerful, she still couldn't fight and win against a myth-grade constellation. But then, a soft hand touched her shoulder. Don't worry, Huiwana. I'll make it happen no matter what. The back of Uriel walking past was smaller than Jiang Huiwan. The latter just couldn't tear her eyes away from that small back. Most ancient good has begun its storytelling. The white wings spread out from that small back and enveloped the whole world as Uriel's true voice resounded out. Oh, hear me, Eden. Jiang Huiwan felt something shake noticeably inside her. Something similar to a fragment was wriggling inside. It was a weighty fragment that began sleeping within her ever since the conclusion of the great war of saints and demons. Wall that divides good and evil has regained its original power. Tsujujujut. Right away, angels began appearing one by one. Lower and mid-tier angels, their number swelling from 10, then to 100, then shooting past 1,000 in an instant. Among them were familiar faces, such as Archangel Gabriel. Not only that, the spirits of the archangels who died during the great war of saints and demons could be seen among them as well. Uriel, the guardian of youth and travel, Raphael called out to her. The angel who always looked at the world with sleepy eyes was slowly kneeling down before her along with all the other archangels. Will you be inheriting Eden? Uriel didn't reply but looked back at her incarnation instead. A certain faint smile seeped into the noble expression of this archangel. Jiang Huiwan called out, but her voice couldn't reach its intended target. The moment Uriel nodded her head, Raphael loudly proclaimed, Uriel, from henceforth you are our great good. Tsujujujaju. The vast corona completely enveloped Uriel's figure. Then the stunningly brilliant platinum-hued armor settled on her. All of Uriel's status was now manifesting itself. Just like back on that day, she reigned as the terror of all demons after cutting off countless demon kings' heads. The strongest star in Eden. The moment the demon-like judge of fire grasped her sword, every kneeling angel stood right back up. Oh, my fellow angels, let us commence with the final great war of saints and demons. Episode 96, Demon-like Judge of Fire 1 Fin. Chapter 502, Episode 96, Demon-like Judge of Fire 2. Odin from the east, Nuwa from the west, and Osiris from the south. We were somehow maintaining a precarious balance within this cauldron of great fable, ceaselessly pounding on us. Your incarnation body is breaking down. I forgot how many times I've heard that message by now. Yu Yonghyok's body right next to me wasn't okay, either. He was left in tatters after taking on the combined attacks from both Odin and Nuwa meant for Han Soo-young and me. Our gazes met for a moment there, but he scowled at me as if to ask, "What are you looking at?" before pulling something out from his inner pocket to swallow it. Incarnation, Yu Yonghyok, is using life and death pill. In the end, he had consumed the very last life and death pill YCLHWA gave us. We didn't have any left now. Yua endure. The Korean peninsula's constellations roared out like untamed beasts and wielded their weapons. Kim Yushin did, so did Jaebik too. Guancheng as well. Constellations that crossed swords once upon a time were now turning over a new leaf together in a single fable under the shade of the Shindansu. Chiak Junjyo could be seen standing at the forefront cutting enemies down. This is why I can't abandon this land even though I curse it so much. Only a few dying will resolve the issue, yet everyone's jumping in to die together. Even Pungbik stayed by his side to raise winds and roared out like a lion. The one who was at odds with us back in the great war of saints and demons was now standing up for our sakes. I can aid the descendants of Hongik. I don't need any compensation. Pungbik's winds writhed violently, and the Hangik-S constellations rode on that wind to rush forward. Yi-Sun-shin's ghost fleet kept firing their cannons, while Jeonwon's arrows pierced through the hearts of many stars. However, the number of enemies didn't seem to be decreasing at all. Where is this Korean peninsula even located in? These measly historical figure-grade bastards dare to, you insects, sweep them all away. Even then, the Korean peninsula's constellations were enduring well. Great fable, Shindansu, is raising the strengths of all constellations from the Korean peninsula. If the enemies had Odin and Osiris, then we too had a myth-grade constellation. The myth grade that could greatly enhance Shindansu's power, constellation, Virtuous Wangyam. Constellation, Virtuous Wangyam, says that this is all the aid he can provide. Unlike other myth-grade constellations, his sense of presence seemed quite faint. It was probably due to the effects of this world line. Hangik didn't have a whole lot to do during this world line after all. And it was quite likely that Hangik-S constellations couldn't get out from the Ark's cabin due to the pressure exerted by other myth-grade constellations. Do not show them your backs, we shall never retreat. Fable Burning the Boats has begun its storytelling. Chiak Junjeong raised his sword, and Yi-Sun-shin continued to command the others. These heroes from the mythical history who had never yielded to any myth continued their battle against the actual gods from various myths. Even though their flesh was torn apart and their entire bodies were wrecked, they never knelt down and continued to wield their blades. The Korean peninsula's surface area was getting smaller and smaller. Jeon Woo-kai, who had morphed into a tiger to fight, finally collapsed. One stroke of Brush's personal brush broke, and Yi-Sun-shin's ghost fleet sank one by one. Even Chiak Junjeong's sword, capable of cutting down thousands of enemies, mountains, and seas, was getting dull as well. I already expected this. I was supposed to harden my resolve several times over by now. The fable to be written from now on would consist of texts stained by the blood of these stars. Star Stream, final great fable is sprouting new buds. Right next second, Thor's hammer came flying in at Chiak Junjeong's neck. It was an attack that not even the Korean peninsula's greatest warrior could dodge. Constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is unleashing all of her status. And it was Uriel that blocked the incoming attack. Kim Dakya, archangels have arrived. Han Suyong shouted out. More archangels descended on the battlefield, accompanied by blinding rays of light, and in the center of them was Uriel wielding the flames of conflagration. It's like me and Gabriel want to join Kim Dakya company too, you see. Uriel said that to us just before we left for the final scenario. She wanted to join our nebula and wanted to become our strength, she said. The constellation who has changed the most from the original Kim Dakya knew. I never figured out why Uriel liked our story so much. Do you really wish to go that far just to help us? All I could do now was to cowardly take advantage of her goodwill. A new great good has appeared in Eden. Uriel's status whipped about stylishly. She was now no longer the fable-grade constellation Uriel. Kugugugugu. A new great good. Myth-grade constellations looked at Uriel and began freaking out. The new great good of Eden, an existence meant to replace the myth-grade constellation, Metatron. Uriel had become Eden's leader and chose to help us. All seraphim advance. Along with Raphael's signal, archangels collided against the fable-grade constellations from Papyrus and Vedas. Most ancient good is searching for its enemy. Do you really think that the likes of a destroyed nebula can overturn this battle's outcome? Odin remained unflustered even then and raised his spear to point it at Uriel. And the god's spear that reputedly no one could evade, Gungnir, flew towards her. Get out my sight. The statuses of Flames of Conflagration and Gungnir collided. Odin's thunderclaps tearing through the heavens, and Uriel's conflagration that incinerated hell clashed face to face. Two statuses fought intensely, in the battle between two myth-grade constellations where neither of them would normally back down. It was surprisingly Odin who withdrew first. His left arm summoning the spear back was trembling ever so slightly. How pathetic, Odin, allow me to help. Mythgrade constellations were far more sensitive towards danger than any other existences. They were the oldest stars in this world that hated unexpected variables, and that was why they would never allow any sort of danger to blossom. Mythgrade constellations exchanged glances in less than a blink of an eye and commenced bombardment on Uriel simultaneously. Quack 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 quack. Even if she was now Eden's great good, she still wouldn't be able to defend against such an attack. However, she didn't back down. Even though feathers of her wings were ripped off and crimson fable splattered on her pale cheeks, her sword didn't weaken at all. None of you are my greatest enemy. Uriel, who had always been watching our fable from high up above in the sky, her eyes were now shifting in my direction. Nebula Eden is readying its great fable. Dakya SSI. From afar, my companions, including Jiang Huiwan, were rushing towards us. Maybe she already knew the truth, knew what Uriel was planning to do here. Sujajajut. Eden alone couldn't fight against all of these great nebulas. The strengths of the mythgrade constellations permeating within this arc would even equal the whole of Star Stream itself. So, if one wanted to defeat them, one required a great fable with truly incredible probability. The stage transformation is activating. Simply put, a massive myth that could bring all the other myths to their doom was needed. I am the demon-like judge of fire. Uriel slowly blinked her eyes, currently burning up like a real demon's. I wish for an evil that will validate my modifier. As her words came to an end, flames erupting out from her flames of conflagration burned through the stars in the heavens. Something began writhing from the other side of hell. The most ancient good called out to its enemy. Right then, Yigilyong's eyes suddenly became white. And the demon curled up in hell's deepest pit answered that call. Something resembling the pitch-black storm, clouds rolled in from beyond the burning sky. Something that was not Asgard, not Vedas, and also not Papyrus, flooded in towards this side while emitting truly despicable and insidious aura. Constellation, ruler of the deepest pit, is opening the pandemonium. Demons began waking up from the skis of the burning hell. Most ancient evil is searching for its enemy. Wall that divides the good and evil is drawing out its theme. The master of pandemonium, bidding its time for an innumerable amount of time, finally revealed its true strengths in place of the absent demon kings. And so, the two representatives of good and evil began colliding with mythgrade constellations caught in the middle. And there was an ancient being observing that great battle between good and evil. The chimera dragon, flapping its wings in Shin Yuseung's side, suddenly began emitting light from deep within its body. It was a scene that happened in the original too. Finally, her dragon was evolving into an ancient dragon. Soon, radiant golden luster blinded everyone. The chimera dragon, now enjoying the status of a complete ancient dragon, roared out to the heavens above. The dragon call, the howling of a dragon that summoned its kin by sacrificing its own life. Guaya. And from the other side of the darkened sky, howls of dragons could be heard. Traces of electricity and flames danced everywhere. All dragons living in this world heeded the chimera dragon's call and were flying over here. The stage transformation's degree of reproduction is rapidly rising up. Rather than tearing into the stars, the dragons started fighting tooth and nail against each other. Instead, even the gold dragon's heart, replacing my original heart, was writhing powerfully as well. It was a sight we all witnessed back in the great war of saints and demons. A dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns will awaken from the center of the hottest hell. He is the dragon among all dragons, the leader of dragons born in the center of chaos, the oldest hatred in this world. The Dragon's Festival, the riot of dragons taking place in the hottest place in hell, had commenced. Mythgrade constellations belatedly realized what was going on here and cried out in sheer astonishment. See, could these bastards be? Make them stop. Everyone here knew very well what kind of calamity would crash the party if another great war of saints and demons took place here. You bastards dare. The great Docubus, not many remaining now after Bihyung's sacrifice, revealed themselves inside the ark. The great Docubi Garing, with its horn now broken off, was yelling out loudly. Suppress that great fable's probability. Great Docubus activated their authorities, and the myth-grade constellations inside the ark used up their own coin reserves as well. Constellation, Master of December 25th, does not want great war of saints and demons. Constellation, Great Mother God who created man out of earth, does not want great war of saints and demons. Constellation, One-Eyed Father does not want great war of saints and demons. Constellation, Master of Abydos, does not want great war of saints and demons. The probability of the unfolding stage transformation was being suppressed, as an incredible amount of coins got injected simultaneously. The star stream's probability flowed towards the direction the majority wanted to see. And at this stage, there didn't seem to be anyone out there capable of going against the will of those possessing the most amount of coins in this world. With an exception of one being. I heard the soft hum of an engine coming from behind, followed by the familiar scent of a cigar. You've come. The mass production type maker stood on my side and spoke up. This is the type of fable that I love the most. He also said something similar back then, when we first met during the Gourmet Association. He was the constellation that loved all the fables of this world. He formed an unreadable expression while looking at the fable of great war of saints and demons, writhing violently before his eyes. He was also a constellation that spent his life mass-producing SSS rank items. It has taken a really long time. My apologies. Honestly speaking, I felt puzzled when I first heard what my black square would be. I believed that no such black square would ever come knocking at my door. And are your thoughts different now? The mass production type maker wordlessly stubbed his cigar and killed it off. He then watched the fable of the great war of saints and demons with me. The history of all our battles was now being recreated in that place. The mass production type maker laughed out. At the very least, I think I understand one thing, why my fable coaxed me to amass such a large reserve of coins until now. Coins began floating up from his fingertips. There were so many that I couldn't even dare to attempt at counting them. It seems that it was for the purpose of completing the one single stage. Coins, along with his life itself, got sucked up into the sky, and his coins collided with the will of the numerous constellations. The myth-grade constellations roared out in anger, and the mass production type maker calmly opened his mouth. The constellation, possessing this world's greatest authority, replied to them. Oh, my dear constellations, I apologize, but I simply must see this stage. And when all of his coins were injected into the probability in the air, its powerful storm began enveloping the entirety of the ark. Meanwhile, the mass production type maker's body suddenly aged at a visible rate. Constellation, mass production type maker's black square is depletion. The deficient probability has been satisfied. Great fable, season of light and darkness, is being completely recreated on the stage. Tsujujujut. A horrifying howl exploded out from the sky. Along with that explosion, dragons fell towards the ground. I quickly pulled both Han Soo-young and Anna Croft closer, and along with Yu Jung-hyuk, evacuated towards where our companions were. Finally, the last verse of all the scenarios, the destruction of all constellations, was fast approaching us. Do not get sucked into this measly little great war of saints and demons. We've won against many so-called great apocalypses time and time again, and got this far. The great fables of the myth-grade constellations began waking up all at the same time. Every great fable found in this world howled out, as if they were unwilling to be overwhelmed by the scale of the great war of saints and demons. However, it was too late now. This dragon will look at the heaven once and at earth once and will strike with its tail. Stars will fall from that single tail flick, and a direction of the world will disappear. A pair of eyes began gleaming from within the darkness. Han Soo-young shuddered uncontrollably the moment she heard the violent howling of a dragon. Kim Dak-ya, could this be? It is. You crazy, if you wake that thing up again now. We aren't planning to wake that guy up. I looked at Yu Sang-ah sitting in the lotus position in the corner while focusing all of her mind on something. Sweat drops trickled down her forehead. Wall that decides samsara is maintaining the seal on the apocalypse dragon. As long as the successor of Sakyamuni was alive, the sealed apocalypse dragon would never be summoned to this place. The flustered Han Soo-young asked me again, then what? Don't you get it? She looked up at the dragons falling from the sky with a dazed expression. The Dragon's Festival was a ceremony to decide the strongest dragon, and the single dragon that managed to survive until the end would become the final dragon of revelation. Since when did it start? Han Soo-young's left arm was trembling like crazy. The new final dragon of revelation has been selected. Kuoyo. Eventually, a massive dragon revealed itself through the destroyed ceiling of the ark. It was so huge that it'd easily tear apart your regular giant star to shreds. Bewitching black flames were dancing on the jet-black slick exterior that had shed its last layer of skin. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, has incarnated into the final arc. He's the Apocalypse Dragon now. Episode 96, Demon-like Judge of Fire 2, Fin. Chapter 503, Demon-like Judge of Fire 3. The Final Dragon of Revelation. The great calamity that decides the end of Great War of Saints and Demons, as well as the most horrifying apocalypse of Starstream itself. The stage transformation's degree of reproduction has exceeded the percentage limit. The lightning bolts powerfully tearing through the storm clouds now took on a different hue than before. Both Asgard's Odin and Papyrus, Osiris' jaws dropped in sheer astonishment. Black Flame Dragon. The Apocalypse Dragon's gaze lingered on Han Soo-young's face for the briefest moment in time. It's possible that Uriel isn't the only constellation different from the original. Back in the original novel, this guy was the constellation backer of the Demon of Delusions, Kim Nam-woon. He was the leader of evil dragons that represented the absolute evil, not to mention the ruler of the nebula Black Cloud. He raised his head high up to the sky and cried out. The entirety of Starstream shuddered from the screech that announced the arrival of this world's final pages. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon's black square is something that can't be found. I had read what his black square was from the original novel. His description showed up when he became Yu Jung-hyuk's ally for a little while during the 1863rd turn. The evil dragon suffering from the worst possible depression in this Starstream. The reason why the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon believed his age to be 15 was simply that he'd not be able to continue on if he didn't. A life stretching for thousands, no, tens of thousands of years, made an originally solitary dragon into such a creature. In order to stop itself from decaying, he chose not to age. He chose not to lose his curiosity of the world. He chose to torment incarnations or play bizarre pranks. And for his final prank, he even chose to betray the absolute evil too. He stood on Yu Jung-hyuk's side and while mocking the Starstream, breathed his last. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon has reached his black. What about this world line though? Did he finally manage to find his black square within this empty universe? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon's black square is pureness. The Abyssal Black Flame Dragon looked at me and smiled. His childlike eyes were now dyeing the world in the night of apocalypse, as if he was satisfied by the role he had found. Fully satisfied probability has recreated the Apocalypse Dragon in the final scenario. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, has achieved perfect unity with the scenario. The myth-grade constellations began roaring at the top of their lungs at the reproduction of Apocalypse Dragon. This is impossible. Every constellation alive was well aware of the fable of Apocalypse Dragon, the great calamity capable of destroying a section of Starstream, with nothing but its first tail flick. Stop him, kill him before the tail flick commences. The clearly freaking out myth-grade constellations ungainly lost their composure and issued their orders. Han Soo-young, Yu Jung-hyuk and I all looked up at that spectacle. None among these myth-grade constellations have experienced the Apocalypse Dragon before, because their peers that did fight it had all perished back then. After all, these bastards had been hiding inside this ark, the safest place in the entire world, and watched the moment of the Apocalypse Dragon being unshackled as if it was a form of entertainment. In other words, they had absolutely no clue what this fear was like, the terror, and what it meant to risk their lives. Yu Jung-hyuk next to me asked a question. You have been preparing for this moment all along, haven't you? I slowly nodded my head. That's right. From the moment the first scenario began, I had been calculating a certain something. Just how much fable would I need to compile in order to massacre the constellations in the final scenario? I couldn't get to an answer. A human's lifespan was short, but stars were eternal. Since our starting lines were different, the battle would never be fair, and most important of all, I wasn't a regressor like Yu Jung-hyuk. I couldn't live a life of 1863 regression turns and fight them afterwards. It was wrong to even think about compiling fables to fight them. Whether it's a legendary or mythical fable, you can't suppress those beings in terms of pure status no matter how many fables you manage to amass. And so, this is what you came up with. I nodded my head and stared at Kim Yushin and Jaebik fighting together with Shindansu behind them. Kim Dokya found the answer to this battle within the stage transformation. The stage transformation. Although it was imaginary, this power would grow closer to reality as probability expanded. I confirmed the potential of this power when defeating Surya back in the Demon King selection battles, and the first outlines of my plan formed in my head when we defeated Olympus back in the Gigantomachia. And I grew even more confident after we experienced the Great War of Saints and Demons, then won the journey to the West. The more they succeeded in the impossible odd scenarios, the greater the power of reproduction their great fable possessed. The air they breathed, the emotions they felt on that day, the fear humans felt while facing the apocalypse, their eyes fixed to the outpouring of the stars. And now, it was the turn of the constellations to feel the fear people felt on that day. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, is continuing on with its storytelling. The Apocalypse Dragon, first tail flick commenced. Quack 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 quack. The Apocalypse Dragon's tail flick was divided into 3 separate shockwaves. The first was electrical wave, the second was heat wave, while the true tail flick and the third wave was the wave of chaos. QA, I shall block this. Thor, who had defended against the electrical wave with me back then, stepped forward. He must have felt confident this time too, since he had dealt with it in the past. Unfortunately, that was a terrible misjudgment on his part. Thor's scorched black figure crash-landed from the air. The reason why he could defend against the electrical wave back then was because Dionysus, me, and my master were there to aid him. However, no one was helping him out this time. Just as the fear-stricken constellations turned around to run, all the myth-grade constellations unleashed their statuses. Along with the incredible storm of aftermaths, all the stars in the sky flickered unsteadily. And then, the exploding electrical wave blanketed entire surroundings like fine fog particles. Once the view cleared out, one could clearly see that the Apocalypse Dragon's electrical wave had been weakened by a great deal. And it only amounted to this much. Tsujujajun. The one who defended against the electrical wave was the leader of Asgard, Odin. His dignified beard, which was his pride and joy, was scorched black. His clothing had all melted down too, leaving him buck naked. He revealed his skin, horrifyingly deformed by that wave, and laughed out loudly. With such measly little Shustuzuzuzat. Right in the next moment, Asgard's constellations manning his side began scattering away like dust. Their lives were exhausted completely while dealing with the probability necessary to offset the shockwave. Odin's eye grew large from shock. Gray-colored powder spread about helplessly in the air. With that one attack alone, half of Asgard was wiped out. Kuilio. It was a similar situation, with Vedas and Papyrus as well. Inuwa. Osiris belatedly understood the severity of this situation and looked behind while shouting that name out. That was where he discovered Nuwa leading the forces of Emperor to withdraw from this cabin. She had recognized the unfavorable battle situation and prepared to retreat from very early on. Gong Pildu. After I called out, Gong Pildu's castle moved. His armed fortress accurately blocked off the path leading to the Emperor's worldview, and its turrets began spitting out flames. You're going nowhere. At same time, the Apocalypse Dragon's second shockwave exploded out. The flames of the heat wave, boiling over from the deepest part in hell, began melting down the constellations in the air. Bureau, how long are you going to sit back and watch? Odin's scream prompted the great Dakibai Garing to raise its hand, while Fable endlessly gurgled out from its mouth. Fine, if you wish to use the stage transformation, then. Suddenly, I felt this ominous foreboding. Tsujachachu. The stage transformation's authority was now in full display. A powerful deluge of sparks caused me to hurriedly look behind, only to discover blood trickling out from Yu Sanga's lips. Sanga's asai. The lotus pedestal spinning next to her suddenly developed cracks. She vomited out a chunk of blood and spoke in an ashamed voice. I stopped one from coming out, but a portion of the other has. There were two great beings sealed away in the Isle of Reincarnators by Sakyamuni. One of them was the Apocalypse Dragon, while the other was. Wall that decides samsara is violently writhing around. Wall that decides samsara is unveiling its theme. Existence from another world is breaking past the wall's seal and has been recreated in this world. Tsujajajut. Black fog was distorting the heavens as it rushed in here. Countless eyes could be seen beyond that dark fog. It was Star Stream's cleaner, the one that should have been imprisoned within the eternal darkness after Sakyamuni had sealed it away. Black, 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 black. Oh, the indescribable distance. I realized what the Dakibus were trying to do. They were trying to use the same method I used back in the Great War of Saints and Demons to stop the Apocalypse Dragon. And so, the two calamities representing the absolute worst-case scenario of Starstream collided. Ha 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 ha, you shall never reach the final verse, you shall never. With those final parting words, the heads of all the great Dakibus exploded. The indescribable distance sucked in their fables and violently writhed. And then, this outer god that had earned the great Dakibus fables and the black flame dragon that earned the power of apocalypse glared at each other. Third shockwave is now commencing. The apocalypse dragon's tail moved. The calamity moved very slowly, its speed very measured but assured. Nuwa grew impatient and yelled out loudly in the air. Just what are you all doing? Fuzai, Shenang, all of you damnable 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, just for how long are you planning to enjoy the slumber of abyss? Kugagagugu. Nuwa's true voice managed to wake up the Emperor's ancient constellations. The blessings from the myth-grade constellations that hadn't shown themselves until now completely enveloped Nuwa's incarnation body. The truly explosive rise in her status forced Going Pildu's armed fortress back. We needed to stop her. We couldn't afford to let them escape back to their own worldview. Great Fable, Journey to the West, has begun its storytelling. The Nebula Emperor's great fable began its story. Nuwa transformed into a gigantic Imugi, and her flames began amassing within her maw. Just before the Emperor's constellations gathered their fighting spirit and rushed towards us. Kirirung rumble. Lightning bolts struck down from the sky, and Nuwa screamed loudly. Great Fable, liberator of forgotten ones, has begun its storytelling. The sight of Tongshan spread out in an instant, and an existence draped in the golden tiger hide defended me. Quack 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 quack. He was the sole existence capable of standing up against the Emperor's vast myth-grade constellations. Constellation, most ancient liberator, has incarnated into the final arc. He was also a star that became my brother. Mei Haoang is looking at you. Bai Mon is looking at you. Duzhen Shengfo is looking at you. All of the Sun Wukongs addressed me. Great Sage, Heaven's equal, is turning his back to you. Go now, Macnia. We could see the apocalypse dragon's tail colliding against the indescribable distance in the distant sky. We all knew very well the likely outcome of that collision. He dreamed of every star's destruction, but did he really wish for such a result? I had never forgotten the final moment of the 1863rd regression turn. The great sage turned around and rushed towards the Emperor's constellations. Even before I could reach out, Yu Yonghyuk and Han Suyong grabbed me and ran away. Gong Pildu continued to shout something, or rather, while Yi Xialhwa was pulling out all the recovery medicines in her possession. I couldn't tell whether Yi Hyunseong's forged steel covered us first, or the pure white flash of light managed to blanket the world before that. It felt like my whole body was melting down from the incredible heat, only to become deathly cold as if I was exposed to a cold snap. When I came to, we were already cast outside the cabin. Fables leaked out indiscriminately from the gaps of the crumbling walls, painfully singing the end of the stars. The prop storage's door hadn't been closed yet. Ash drifted out through the half-open doorway. The fourth wall is violently trembling. Maybe somehow everyone inside that cabin was. Shuzut. There was a faint presence of someone beyond it, and Han Suyong's voice entered my ears almost at the same time. Kim Dakya. I crawled towards the door. My heart didn't want to stop pounding away. I barely managed to reach the rim of the doorway and saw someone standing there. Torn white feathers were cascading downwards one by one. My lips bobbed up and down. I wanted to say something. But in place of my mouth wanting to open, Uriel slowly bent down first. Dakya. I couldn't hear her true voice properly. I tried so hard to get back up as Uriel reached out to me, and her white hand brushed past my face as if she was stroking my cheek and brows. I saw the enemy constellation standing back up from beyond Uriel's broken wings. Some stars somehow managed to survive even from this utterly horrifying calamity. The stage transformation has concluded. I could no longer sense the status of the indescribable distance. I then saw the huge body of the abyssal black flame dragon, now lying unmoving on the floor, and the constellations from the great nebulas pouncing on top of him, as well as demons tearing into the wings of archangels. Countless enemies were approaching Uriel. Yuri! I was about to open the door, grab my sword, and cut them down for Uriel. However, the door did open. Uriel held fast the doorknob from the other side and didn't let go. Jiang Huiwan's cry, as desperate as a real scream, resounded out. Uriel, hurry, hurry and get out of there. It's okay. I didn't want to hear what she was about to say next. Uriel smiled at me. You guys, you've only seen up to this far in the story, that's all. The cabin's door was closed shut. You have accomplished a feat that no star in Starstream has ever managed to accomplish. The story beyond the door could no longer be heard. Some of us screamed out, while some despaired. The ark seemed to tilt out of balance before it crashed against something along with a loud boom. I rolled around on the floor ungainly. The vibration of the ark had already come to a stop by the time I lifted myself up, the wave of vicious dizziness washing over me non-stop. I didn't have any energy left to even stand. I could only manage to raise my head and look ahead. My eyes followed after the broken partitioning walls to discover a new location. That unknown something colliding with the ark had become connected to the vessel's interior. All the stars in Starstream will never forget you. None of those stars were looking at us now, But there was one existence remaining still looking at us. King of Stories is waiting for you. A yellowish mineral-like object rolled down the slope of the destroyed ark. I recognized what that was. That gemstone was what we had been searching for inside this ark all along, after all. However, neither me nor my companions had any energy left to focus on that gemstone. I left the ark and slowly scanned our surroundings. We were greeted by a wall so vast that its ends couldn't be seen. Fables leaking out from the ark was permeating into that wall. And so Kim Dokya has finally arrived at his destination. That wall was now talking to me. The end of all these stories, the final wall, was right before their eyes. Episode 96, Demon-like Judge of Fire 3 Finn. Chapter 504, Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 1. The smartphone inside my coat vibrated and emitted whoong, whoong noise. This whole story began the moment he read that novel. Texts rose above the phone. The expansive wall before me seemed uncannily similar to the screen of this device. From Yu Jung-hyuk's third regression turn all the way to the 1863s, the wall that, most likely, had recorded all the stories that I knew of. Kim Dokya used to think about a certain thing back when he was working for the QA team. What if I'm the only one who knows about this bug? I turned around and found Han Soo-young there. She seemed to have something to say, but was unable to find the right words. The bandages imbued with the abyssal black flame dragon's grace wrapped around her left hand were slowly scattering away. I took a close look at each of my companions. Jiang Hui-won was on her knees, her visibly shaking hands pressed to the ground, while Yi Hyun-seong was carrying the unconscious Yi Gil-yong. Yi Hwa and Gong Pil-du were supporting each other while exiting from the ark. And in the distance, I spotted Jang Ha-yong, who had narrowly escaped from the cabin along with our masters. Alajasi. Shin Yu-seung was looking at her hands. Rather than calling out to me, though, her voice was much closer to a murmur directed at herself. A lone piece of scale from the chimera dragon rested in her palm. Yu Sang-a approached her and placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. As her hand felt the soft, trembling sob, Yu Sang-a wordlessly shifted her gaze over to the exit we all escaped from. The stars they used to know had grown dark. My vision shook from the dizziness. I couldn't sense the gazes of the stars. Was it because every single one of them was extinguished? But that couldn't be. No, this was simply because all the great Dakibus had disappeared, that's all. Every channel operated by the Bureau had received massive impact, and that caused system errors. Had to be. He wouldn't be able to go on if he didn't believe in that. I staggered but still managed to find my balance. The last person I spotted was Yu Jung-hyuk. His dark heavenly demon sword was currently stabbing through the corpses of great Dakibis. Fables from dead constellations dripped steadily from the edge of his blade. He was staring at me with his usual expressionless face of his. Is this the conclusion you desired? The fourth wall is violently shaking. The fourth wall is activating even more strongly. My mouth opened slowly, only to be shut again. Completion of the final scenario is imminent. The ark's core I had been searching for all this time rolled around on the ground. It was a piece of mineral emitting a brilliant yellowish hue. The powers of countless great fables drifting around in this world line were condensed to create this hardened essence. The ark's core. It was the source of energy for the great fable weapon, Final Ark. Destroying it would bring an end to this 99th scenario and conclude our battle. The completion of Starstream's final fable is around the corner. Tsuchachu. Suddenly, my steps came to a stop. Vines sprouted out from the ground and wrapped around my ankles. Zarathustra's appeared from seemingly out of nowhere and used restriction skills on me. Selena Kim was avoiding my gaze as if she was apologetic about this. Soon afterwards, I could hear the prophet's voice. Thanks to you, our workload has been greatly lightened, Demon King of Salvation. Anna Croft, already holding the ark's core, was looking in this direction. Humanity's hero that dreams of a different conclusion to Kim Dokya. You shouldn't be too surprised about this. I shall be taking this core with me. I had already heard about the world she dreamed of. The perfect night. She dreamed of complete freedom from the gazes of all constellations, and that dream entailed migrating safely to a different world line along with every incarnation from this world. However, the Ark is already destroyed. It can be rebuilt. Anna Croft looked back at the wrecked Ark. It was broken beyond salvage, unable to be reused ever again. However, she didn't lose hope. One of the human incarnations is proficient with crafting fable weapons. Alien under your care is another person capable of doing that as well. Now that there aren't any myth-grade constellations to hinder us, give me that core. I see, there is still a myth-grade constellation remaining, isn't there? Her eyes glowed in red. The eye of Great Demon. Her power to read this world's past and future began tying me down. She had completely awakened the power of that eye, and currently, she enjoyed status rivaling a decent fable-grade constellation. The opponent of all the stars. This was the same as the original, too. Anna Croft hated all the constellations in this world, and that was why she swore to use the power of stars to destroy the stars themselves. In order to complete her night, she'd not spare me either. If this story was really the same as the original, that is. The tip of her blade pointing at me seemed to be hesitant over something. It's not too late, Kim Dokya. The event that had never happened before in the original. I sensed Yu Young-hyuk, standing not too far while holding the dark heavenly demon sword's grip, being faintly surprised. Anna Croft lightly sucked in her breath and began telling her story. I do not know the conclusion you dream of. My precognition can't read that far ahead, you see. However, I can make an educated guess. The fact that my precognition can't see your conclusion means that it's related to that final wall. However, please consider this carefully, Kim Dokya. Consider whether that is the best course of action for us all, for the rest of humanity or not. This would be her first time speaking so many words at once. I silently listened to her. Isn't this enough already? You have experienced enough tragedies by now. You've lost so much, and your most precious things have been ridiculed upon. Even then, are you still curious about this world's one single fable? Just for something like that, are you going to forsake the survival of the human race? Every word she spoke contained desperation, words that emphasized her justice while resenting mine. And soon, that had become a fable too. A blindingly bright fable wrapped around Anna Croft and the Zarathustras. Although not as clear or flashy as a constellation's, it nevertheless was indomitable and beautiful. Every facet of the fable they had compiled together contained their unyielding belief. The emotion that countless stars had forgotten about a long time ago. She got this far because she hadn't forgotten her pledge. Kim Dokya, please give up on your black. I ask of you, please, let us head to my perfect night together. Those words caused the eyes of several Zarathustras to grow wider. That was understandable, however. The offer she made just now was basically the same as going against her own beliefs. What Anna Croft said was tantamount to asking me to become the lone star that would shine in the night of the brand new world. Although I was thankful for the offer, I'm a constellation. I could never accept it. Sujachachu. I lightly aroused my status, and the vines restricting me all fell away. And as if to mock her goodwill, all of my fables began telling their stories. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. The horn of the Demon King grew up on my head, and Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, is howling out. The unbreakable faith that slew gods viciously cried out, and Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, is looking at the world of humans. Wings I received by betraying the Archangel spread out next. Then, Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, is mocking Star Stream. The ominous and evil aura of chaos enveloped my entire body. Anna Croft's eyes were trembling uncontrollably. They shifted around urgently, as if to find any remaining trace of humanity from my appearance. However, there was this thing that we both knew. How could you call an existence a regular human when you had to search so hard to find his humanity? In the end, you're the same as that demon king of salvation. Deep anguish was thickly pervading her murmurs. Rather than a calm revelation of the truth, her voice contained her determination over a certain something instead. I shall kill you right here. Stupendous status began flooding out from Anna Croft's figure. I already knew that she had been conserving her strength while getting this far. Even if you're a myth-grade constellation, you can't stop me with your current physical condition. Besides, your companions don't seem to be in their right frame of minds, so Jiang Hui-1, Yi Hyun-seong, Yi Gil-yong, and even Shin Yu-seung too. They still hadn't recovered themselves yet, it seemed. Even Han Soo-yong was wordlessly staring at me. Her eyes, the ones that always trusted in me, were shaking for the first time ever. Perhaps it was inevitable. They had witnessed their sponsors getting slaughtered right before their own eyes, after all. Let's end it here. A dozen or so Zarathustras all dashed towards Yu Jung-hyuk in an instant, and right next second, Anna Croft approached me like a streak of light, her dagger stabbing towards my neck. I calmly watched the tip of that blade before opening my mouth. Enough with your pranks, Loki. Along with those words, Anna Croft's movement froze up. I lightly raised my finger and brushed her dagger aside. Looking clearly astonished, she muttered out in sheer confusion next. What is the meaning of? Constellation that likes changing gender is cackling away. Loki, this is not what you promised. A massive amount of status bore down on Anna Croft in the Zarathustras. The so-called constellation that liked changing gender, the final star of Asgard, Loki, was now standing there. Not one among the Zarathustras could resist his power, because it was precisely him who freed them from the Asgard's control. But I'm doing this for humanity. Those were Anna Croft's last words before she passed out. The core fell out from her hand and rolled on the ground towards my feet. I bent down and picked it up. It's really been entertaining, Demon King of Salvation. I straightened my back to discover a man standing before me, a man with green hair and a mischievous smile. Constellation, one who changes his existence, is looking at you. The one who changes his existence, one of the highest-ranked constellations in Asgard, Loki. Also, a constellation who helped us many times during our journey up to this point. Someone with an agenda that we couldn't figure out before. He had safely escaped from the Apocalypse Dragon's calamity and chased after us. Thanks for your help. The conclusion to this world is literally right before us, so I can't afford to let that go to waste because of a measly little human. Besides all that, there isn't anyone left for you to frighten here, so why don't you undo that scary appearance of yours? I dismissed my horn in the wings, then spoke up. Why don't you reveal your true self as well? What do you mean? I thought we both tacitly agreed to drop the pretense. My words caused Yu Jung-hyuk, observing the situation, to address me. Kim Dakya, I'm right about this. I glared at Loki. The constellation, one who changes his existence. If my thoughts were correct, then this guy was no constellation. Constellation, one who changes his existence, is revealing his true identity. Khan's black square telation, his Iden black square tie. Blinding light blanketed Loki, then his silhouette began changing next. His height shrunk down a little, and creases on his face rapidly increased in number, and eventually, two large growths ballooned out with his cheeks as the middle. The existence capable of exploiting the star stream, bug at will. The irreconcilable enemy of every Dakibai in the world, and the founder of the Seekers of Apocalypse. I had encountered this being once before. Back in the journey to the west's Tangshan River, he opposed the great Dakabis trying to obstruct me in my stead. His lips distorted slightly to form an insidious grin. That's right, you people aren't the only ones dreaming of Starstream's end. The Weni King. Having discovered the creature's true identity, Yu Jung-hyuk unhesitantly unsheathed the dark heavenly demon sword. Why don't you put that thing away? I have no thoughts of fighting you. The Wenny King playfully waved his hands about and continued on. What I wish to see is only one thing. The unknown something found beyond this final wall that you've been searching for. That's all. And also, go woo-woo. I don't think now isn't the time for you folks to worry about me. The moment I looked back, someone angrily grabbed hold of my collars. Yijai-Hai's face was pressing right up to mine. Fables of rage and resentment leaking out from her entire incarnation body was pounding down hard on my body. Ajasi, what the hell is this, NG? Was this a part of your plan too? The spirit of the ocean that used to permeate her could no longer be felt. That gentle scent of saltiness wafting in when I first met her back in the subway could no longer be picked up. Kim Dakyao. Yijai-Hai was crying as she shook me around. No one tried to stop her. Not Yu Sangha, not Jiang Huiwan, not even Shin Yu Seung. Everyone's head was lowered, their eyes fixed to the ground. And Kim Dakya understood their feelings. All of their resentment was my burden to carry. However, there was someone who didn't think that way. Yijai-Hai. It was Han Suyong. Let me go. Yijai-Hai's reaction to Han Suyong's hand grabbing her shoulder was vicious, to say the least. However, the latter didn't let go. Her dogged hand swept back Yijai-Hai's bangs, wiped the thick teardrops away, then she continued with what she wanted to say. The black flame dragon Uriel, the maritime war god, they are not dead yet. How do you know that? I can sense them. It's really faint, but I can definitely feel they are still alive. Also. Her voice sounded cold yet caring, to the point, and didn't waver once. Only Han Suyong could have spoken in such a voice. Wipe your tears away and take a good look. Look at the state of the bastard you're choking right now. The stupefied-looking Yijai-Hai had dropped her head, only to raise it back up again. And for a very long time, she hesitated and stared at me. I didn't try to avoid that gaze. But why? Yijai-Hai's voice was trembling. Why are you crying too, Ajasi? Her hands grabbing hold of my collars let go. Han Suyong quickly seized that opening to dig in and punched me in the face. Get your shit together, you idiot. Now, give us a proper explanation. You probably didn't come here without a concrete plan, right? If one were to flip her words around, then she was threatening to really kill me if I caused such an event without thinking too much about it. She continued with her questioning. There is a way to save our sponsors, right? Right. There was no such method. Lights from many constellations were turned off in the star stream, pitch-black night sky. However, you'd still be able to spot a few that flickered away when taking a closer look. They were stars with lights faintly discernible only after staring at them for a very long time. Kim Dakya hated the constellations. He had never forgotten that emotion, not even for a second. Right eye. However, this world scenario managed to change such a Kim Dakya. I looked at the final wall, the wall where all the fables were recorded on. The wall that existed solely to record the one single fable that all the Dakibus longed for. But it might be too late now. All this tragedy existed to be recorded on that wall. No, hang on, maybe it was the opposite. All these events happened because it was already recorded on that wall. However, it's also possible. Changing what happened already was impossible. It should not be possible to revive those whose souls had been extinguished and get rid of the pain as if nothing happened. Indeed, it shouldn't be possible at all to save a world line that had been destroyed already. Because the damn probability of this world wouldn't permit that. Because such a story would be the same as the squared circle Han Suyong mentioned earlier. However, what if such a thing was possible? What if a wall that could bring the squared circle to reality existed in this world? I squeezed the core gripped in my hand tightly. Main Scenario 99. Enemy of the story has been cleared. Calculation for the completion reward has begun. Currently, no great Dakibus exists to take the role of calculating the reward. Reward calculation is being delayed. You have earned the qualification to meet the King of Stories. The blinding wall opened its jaw for us. Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 1 Fin. Chapter 505, The Star That Can't Be Seen 2. Starstream wishes to name your last fable. You are now given the choices of final fable. Nebula Kim Dakya Company's epic has become the final candidate for the one single fable. Stars that will be born in Starstream will extol your fable. While reading the messages popping up one after the other, we took stock of our current situation. Although they all still looked shell-shocked, we simply couldn't afford to stop here. Gong Pildu suddenly raised his voice. Will the main scenario end with this? Unlike how it usually was, no new scenario was issued even though a main scenario had come to an end. What entered our ears instead was a system message. Starstream, main scenario system has entered the closing sequence. It was a message none of us had ever heard before. Curtains were finally closing on the vast world of scenarios. We all formed blank expressions, not knowing what to say. If this thing ends, what will happen to the world? Gong Pildu stared at the wall with a hollow expression. Countless texts blooming on the wall must have sensed his gaze, because they repeatedly scattered only to reform again. Some among those texts were even related to Gong Pildu himself, the man who lost his family at the start of the scenario. He seemed to be deeply fatigued somehow. I could have been mistaken, but I thought there was something welling up in his eyes too. I hesitated for a bit before addressing him. There is one more being remaining, the one that controls all the scenarios. That bastard has to be killed off too. If you're too exhausted, it's fine to remain here. After coming all this way, pure rage bubbled up on Gong Pildu's face. I can never forgive that bastard. It won't nearly be enough for me to rip him apart into little pieces. It felt as if I was the one being attacked the moment I peered into his eyes. At the same time, I thought I saw the fables of regular people who died during the scenarios reflected behind his back. And all those fables seemed to blame Kim Dakya. That bastard took away my family and my lands. I must definitely. Gong Pildu spoke up to there, and keeled over as bloody foams bubbled out of his mouth. Yisialhwa quickly supported him and felt his pulse. The damage to his incarnation body is extensive. During the battle inside the cabin, Gong Pildu protected the companions along with Yihyeonseong. His proud armed fortress was seriously damaged. The status of his sponsor, the defense master, could barely be felt too. It was quite likely that this was as far as he could go. I'll take him with us. He also has the right to witness the end after all. Please take care of him. Yisialhwa activated her unique skill stretcher and placed Gong Pildu on the bed made out of magic net. In the meantime, both Yijihai and Jiang Huiwon regained their energy and stood up from their spots. Let's go, Dakya SSI. Whatever happens, we should still try to see the end at least. I was ashamed by the fact that Jiang Huiwon had to say those words, because she must have been the one to resent me the most among our group. She lightly tapped me on the shoulder. Don't think about anything unnecessary. My sponsor told you, right? We only got to see that far in that story. Meaning, no one knows what will happen next. Her voice contained an icy determination. Yihyeonseong put Yigil-yong on his back and nodded his head after hearing her. Huiwon-SSI is correct. It was the same story for both Shin Yuseung and Yijihai. Even though so many things happened, the companions still believed in Kim Dakya. Could my companion see that sentence? Was it okay for someone like me to read that sentence? Tsuja Chachu, will you enter the interior of the final wall? A new message floated up soon afterwards. The probability sparks whipped about madly above the wall. With those sparks as the center, the wall seemed to retract. Letters above the white surface rescinded, and a small entrance we could go through was generated. Han Soo-yong asked in a suspicious voice, "Do you have a plan for what's beyond here?" Grayish fog filled up the inside of the entrance. It was a veil of fog I was familiar with from the sentence that I had memorized after reading them over and over again. Finally, Yu Jung-hyuk, who lost everything, was looking beyond the fog. This passageway was the very same one that the 1863rd turns Yu Jung-hyuk had passed by. You said that what happens next isn't even mentioned in the ways of survival. I nodded my head. The only remaining thing was to enter, although my last concern was, please go ahead. Zarathustra's can't go any further. We've been informed that we don't have the qualifications to enter. Unlike Anna Croft, her subordinates, Zarathustra's, didn't possess all that many fables connected to Kim Dakya Company. They looked at me with sorrowful eyes for a little while, then silently moved out of the way and created a path. Incarnation, Selena Kim has accepted her black. Incarnation, Selena Kim's black is unreachable dream. Please take care of Anna. Selena Kim's voice was transmitted through voice projection. I slowly but deeply nodded my head and turned around to leave. Footsteps belonging to my companions could be heard coming from behind me. My companions had become one constellation. My companions, who didn't emit light in the same direction as everyone else. Let's get going. Even then, everyone here all wished to confirm the conclusion. It was right then, a shadow suddenly appeared drifting around in the fog before us. Anna Croft's blonde hair spread in the air. However, the one controlling her body wasn't her. Yu Jung-hyuk focused on the Wenny King's movements, while tightly grasping the hilt of the dark heavenly demon sword. Are you thinking of trusting the Wenny King? He hadn't lowered his wariness since a while ago, and continued to emit intense bloodlust towards the Wenny King at every opportunity he could find. I also didn't like the Wennies. They tried to kidnap Bu, and even tried to pull a fast one on me back in the demon world, too. I don't trust him. We're just entering a temporary alliance, that's all. We made a deal in the past, you see. A deal? I didn't offer up a detailed explanation, because the one who could do it for me made his appearance, that's why. Looks like you don't trust me at all, regressor. Seeing the Wenny King speak through Anna Croft's mouth, I couldn't help but think that this had to be the worst combination imaginable. To think that two individuals Yu Jung-hyuk hated had been combined into one. Yu Jung-hyuk wordlessly sent his magical energy to the dark heavenly demon sword. He was getting ready to strike down at the slightest hint of provocation. I heard the story from other Wennies. It seems that you've cut off the lumps of my children. And do you wish for yours to be cut off too? The Wenny King cackled as if he was deeply amused. What's so funny? I truly enjoy your unnecessary aloofness. You were the same back in the demon world and in Murim. I had been spending a really long, boring time there, but things became rather entertaining all thanks to you. One more word, and I shall cut off your lumps. Oya Yu Jung-hyuk. Yu Jung-hyuk seemed to be more fired up than usual, so I quickly stopped him. Nothing good would come about by getting into a scuffle with the Wennies here. Why did it happen, though? His unfocused aura was different from his usual self. Maybe his thoughts had gotten complicated now that the end was upon us. The Wenny King alternated his gaze between Yu Jung-hyuk and me, before opening his mouth. I see that you two are good friends. Even as the scary glare in Yu Jung-hyuk's eyes was rekindled, the Wenny King carried on. I too had someone like that once upon a time. He used to love the stories a lot, just like the Demon King of Salvation over here. I don't want to hear about your sob story. We carried out the scenarios together. We overcame many close shaves and fought against the absolute beings that ridiculed us. We compiled fables to create more fables, and after compiling great fables, we even created an epic yarn too. And with that epic, we eventually reached the final wall. Wenny King had reached this final wall before. This information never appeared in the ways of survival. You probably never heard about it. That story doesn't even remain as a fable anymore. Maybe someone like the Apocalypse Dragon, who had gone insane from the repeated history, might be able to barely recall it. There was Starstream even back in your day. Back then it was called a slightly different name. The name Starstream was given only after we saw the end of this world. Here was a being that saw the end of the world before us. What was the black square for them back then? And just what happened back then that caused this creature to become the Weni King and drift around the scenarios? And that bastard is now called the King of the Stories. The sound of something collapsing heavily could be heard from beyond the fog. That's why I'm looking forward to your last verses. I'm genuinely curious on who'd end up as the final winner of this scenario. Tsujajachu. The fog before us began rumbling loudly. Looks like it's time to go meet my old friend. Along with those words, all traces of the Weni King vanished. However, his message continued to be heard. It'll be wise for you to start moving soon, before you all get devoured, that is. Devoured. Ajasi. Yijai, following us from behind, suddenly cried out and disappeared through the floor. And then, hands like things suddenly emerged from the floor and nearby walls to grab and yank at our arms and legs. Jaihaya. Character Yijai has become a part of the great story. Jiang Huiwan reached out towards Yijai being sucked into the floor. However, it was too late. Even Jiang Huiwan herself was being sucked in now. Walls transformed into bottomless quicksand and swallowed her up. Character Jiang Huiwan has become a part of the great story. Huiwan SSI. I watched Hyunseong dash towards Jiang Huiwan, but that only made me lose my bearing. Did something like this happen back in the ways of survival? Just what the hell? Yu Younghyuk was the only person crossing this passage back in the ways of survival. I had overlooked that simple fact. Not even once did Yu Younghyuk try to cross this passage with these many people before. Everyone gather around me. Unfortunately, it was too late by then. Yi Hyunseong, Yi Hwa, Gong Pil-du, and even Yu Sang-ah and the kids were all snatched up by the hands of the walls and got absorbed. Character Shin Yu-seung has become a part of the great story. Character Yu Sang-ah has become a part of the great story. My heart was racing non-stop. The word character especially got on my nerves amidst all those messages. Han Soo-young Yu Young-hyuk. He was already half sucked into the floor by now. There wasn't even enough time to resist. Step back. The sword wind Yu Young-hyuk fired pushed me back. I barely managed to evade the text trying to grab my ankles. Character Yu Young-hyuk has become a part of the great story. Eventually, even Yu Young-hyuk was taken away. Han Soo-young was the only one remaining. However, one of her arms was already being swallowed up. Hurry this way. I used every ounce of my strength to pull her out. The effects of the way of the wind permeated into my feet, and the explosive forward momentum wrapped around me. Final Wall is exposing its greed over your epic. Final Wall is looking at the individual not yet included in its story. Tsujajajun. Han Soo-young's body was trembling as if she was having a seizure. The only other person who wasn't a character besides himself was Han Soo-young. I ran as hard as I could. Unfortunately, the wall's pursuit proved to be persistent. What's worse, I had no clue where exactly I was running off to. Front, back, side, up. I looked everywhere but couldn't see a place I could escape to. Poof! Along with the sensation of stepping on air, the ground vanished. This was the same tactic that took away Yijai and Jiang Huiwan. The wall was now sucking me in, too. Han Soo-young and I began falling as if this was an endless emptiness. The gray fog rushed in with every heavy breath I took, constricting me. Kim Dak-ya was scared of the stories he did know. Texts with incredible density interfered with my breathing. I couldn't recognize this fable due to the inordinate amount of letters. As the term implied, the great fable was crushing me. I struggled and flailed about trying to escape from this fable somehow. However, the more I struggled, the more this vague fear dug into me. It felt like everything inside me was emptying out. Texts were escaping from the tip of my fingers. Fables that formed the basis of me were disappearing. It was then. The fables that constitute you exist through what you see, experience, and feel. That one sentence got stuck by my fingertip. That was the fable control method Yu Hosiang taught me back in the Isle of Reincarnators. Let them know that you're looking at them too. I grabbed hold of that sentence. When I did, the things that constituted the fable along with that sentence began popping up inside my head. Kim Dakya calmly controlled his breathing. I decided to stop my escape attempt from this vast cosmos of texts. Fables opened their maws wide as if to swallow me up in one go. These things wouldn't even exist if I don't look into them. There was no need to fear them. These were just fables. Tsujachachu. I stared into the words rushing in. I didn't even blink and glared at those texts to let them know that I was reading them right here. Right next second, the words scattered around like fog before coalescing together again. In order to not get devoured by the fable, one had to become a Dakya/reader. As if to express their gratitude towards the one discovering them, the sentences began circling around my feet. Soon, they became footholds for me to walk on. A person who loves fables, yet still reads on without getting drunk in them. Only then will the fables become viable means to oppose the formless emptiness. My falling stopped. I lightly stepped on the sentences piling up below my feet. They were not the texts from the ways of survival. I'm Dakya. I used to introduce myself to other people in this manner, but that would lead to the following misunderstanding. Even then, they seemed somewhat familiar to me. While reading those sentences, I walked forward a step at a time. Some among them were stories that I already knew, some that I didn't, and some whose memories had faded now. When Kim Dakya was young, he began thinking about a certain thing. The young me was scribbling something on a notebook. It was a well-organized power balance sheet of the way of survival, as well as hidden peace locations. And also, what's this? I wouldn't have done it that way. I began cooking up my own methods of conquering the ways of survival. What an idiot. You should have conquered that pitch-black place like this. The item you'll need is... Getting the ampules from the laboratory is the core of the Cinema Dungeon's conquest plan, and you definitely need to get the Gampyongui at this point in time. It's even more important than getting the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. The sense of déjà vu grew stronger as I took more steps forward. There's no other choice but to kill all the constellations. There's no other way at this point. To become stronger without regressing. As I thought, the best route is this. The first great fable must be earned in the demon world. The sentences my younger self wrote now illuminated the path I was walking on. I began thinking as I tread on those words. To save everyone. Maybe this path began long before the time I could recall. Doug. Eventually, the sentences were cut off, and a small, white door waited for me where the words had ended. It was the exact same door the 1863rd turns Yu Jung-hyuk had opened. The epilogue to all the stories he hadn't read yet was beyond that door. I wordlessly stared at the doorknob. Just to turn this doorknob. The entire story that began with Yu Jung-hyuk flitted in and out of my head. And in this very moment, that one question I had from a very long time ago, but never spoken out aloud, floated back up to the fore. What kind of an epilogue did TLS 123 want to write for the ways of survival? I reached out towards the door's handle, only to unwittingly look behind me. There was a path made out of vast fables. This sight felt bizarrely alien now that I looked at it from this far. I stared at that road for a long time. Then opened the door. Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 2, Finn. Chapter 506, The Star That Can't Be Seen 3. The universe in the beginning was 1. When I regained my wits, that sentence was floating in front of my eyes. I couldn't tell whether that was just a line of text or a memory of something taking possession of the sentence. The One was truly omniscient and omnipotent in this world, because the One was the universe itself and the universe was the One. The One was perfect, and it was perfectly alone. Right after that, a blinding explosion went off. And that's how one became two. That was the first explosion. People later on would call it the Big Bang. One was no longer omnipotent afterwards. An incredible dizziness assaulted me, and I fell down on my hands and knees. This was inside the door, the deepest part of the final wall. The wall didn't try to suck me in anymore. Maybe I had already been sucked in. I looked around to discover Han Soo-young collapsed on the floor. I placed her unconscious figure on my back and stood up. I raised my head to realize that Anna Croft was now standing before me. Looks like you saw the first fable. The Wenny King currently possessing her was smiling in my direction. I made the exact same face as you when I first saw it too. I didn't reply. I had no time to shoot breezes with him like this. Where did my companions disappear to? Maybe he read my anxiousness, because he continued to speak to me. Aren't you curious? Why does this thing called fable exist in this world? I didn't come here to discuss such things with you. However, it'll be impossible to go any further without talking about it first. It was the same for me, you see. I could hear Han Soo-young's breathing coming from my back. Her breath soon became a fable and unfolded before me. The world seemed to distort, and a passage decorated with display shelf-like things appeared next. The universe became two, and the one grew lonely. Things that weren't necessary back when there was only one began appearing. Figurine-like beings were engaged in combat above these display shelves. The history of scenario that began in countless planets, including Earth, was on display right there. The good and evil was created to differentiate the two. Augars and Metatron were bitterly fighting each other. That was the great war of saints and demons, where angels and demons, even as they bled crimson-colored fables, never compromised on their ideals. The communication was invented to soothe the two's loneliness. Citizens were battling demons within the walls of the industrial complex, and I saw Jang Hyong trying to dissuade this battle between those walls. And samsara, a wish to return to when it was one, was created. Next up was Sakyamuni, gently stroking a certain incarnation body trapped within a water tank inside his chamber. It was the incarnation body belonging to the now-dead Tang Sanzang, who loved Sakyamuni once upon a time. However, two could never go back to being one. All the fables I had been reading were displayed here. These battles were repeating themselves within the predetermined conclusion. Han Soo-young must be slowly waking back up, because I could feel her tremble a little. The two needed something to connect the divided two, an existence that would live through all the fables and act as a proxy to their good and evil, their communications and their samsara. My feet came to a dead stop just then. The character I couldn't leisurely watch on anymore. The Wenny King, walking next to me like a ghost, spoke up. It's such a malicious joke, don't you agree? He cackled before hiding within my shadow. The number of individuals appearing on the display cabinet grew. Some were simply put on display like some plastic figurines, while there were some still trapped in the wall with only their faces exposed as if molding hadn't been completed yet. Jai-hai Yusyunga. I recognized those faces. I tried so hard to free them from there, but the more I struggled, the deeper their faces sunk into the wall. I ran along the display shelf. Yisialhwa Gong Pildu Yigilyong Yu Sanga. Everyone from Kim Dakya Company was here, and also Yu Yonghyok. Yu Yonghyok's figure revealed itself from beyond the thick fog. His entire body was currently tied up with copper-colored chains, his eyes closed and unmoving, and a faint silhouette could be spied below him. That was none other than the king of the stories. The fog obscured his face, so I slowly walked over to him. You have encountered the king of the stories. End of the main scenario is here. There never was much info on the Dakibai King within the pages of the Ways of Survival. However, not appearing in the novel didn't mean that no information regarding him could be found elsewhere, because I knew of those that had met him already. However, none of them mentioned what the Dakibai King looked like. At the end of the final fog, the king of the stories was waiting for me. The king of the stories is smiling at you. And then, the fourth wall is intensely trembling. I had to doubt my own eyes next. This was from a very old memory. The head-pounding dizziness assaulted me as my vision shook greatly. There is no way, no, such a thing is simply impossible. Finally we meet, the apostle of black, no, wait. Small bits of sparks danced before my eyes and removed the filtering altogether. Oh, the apostle of eternity and epilogue. Kim Dakya roared out like a thunderclap and rushed forward. I didn't even have enough time to think. I grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. I wanted to choke him to death right here, right now, but for some reason my hands wouldn't listen to me. That man was tall. He always looked down on his son from high above. This man, he couldn't be here. The man with an always flushing face, always drunk, and because of that, the son never really met gazes with this man. No, the son prayed that their gazes would never meet each other's. Dakyaya Kim Dakya. The world would turn into a nightmare if their gazes met, that's why. I really did come up with a splendid name for you, did I? Sujajajajaj. I threw out a punch with all my might. His height that seemed so tall back then was now about the same. The time seemed to be slowing down. Those protruding veins only served to make him look emaciated instead. Sujajajaj. The son thought he could win now. He was not a powerless little child anymore. The fist I swung with all my power was stopped right before his nose. Sparks exploding brightly illuminated the man's face. The Dakibai king, his eyes glowing bright blue, smiled like a devil at me while standing there. What do you think you're doing to your own father? I roared out. I was not cognizant of what I was saying nor even doing at that moment. The fourth wall was crumbling down. Kim Dakya, get yourself together. And then a voice could be heard. There was this warmth still pressing onto my back. Han Suyong's fable was being transmitted to me. This was the Dakya/reader's fable. The story that protected me. The fourth wall, what are you doing? Wake up. The fourth wall is strongly revitalized. The fourth wall is growing as thick as an impregnable fortress. It was then the expression on the Dakibai king changed. You're obstructing me. It seemed that he was now looking not at me, but the thing inside me. The last fragment of the final wall, your duty is now over. The fourth wall is viciously growling. You have safely reached the end of the entire story, along with the successor that meets all the requirements. The fourth wall was speaking from inside me. It is for Kim Dakya to decide. I gradually regained my calm while listening to those words. This creature before me was not my father. The memories shared with my mother became a fable and flowed right before my eyes. Her memories got swallowed up by the fourth wall. Her sentences floated up above that wall and tried to speak to me. He died on that day. You are not my father. How can you be so sure? Stop with your pranks. It's impossible for you to be my father probability-wise. Probability, is it? Haha, I've no excuses after hearing that. I thought it'd be the most natural thing to see this face at this point in time. The Dakibai king smiled even as I continued to grab him by his scruff. His face then began transforming. In that case, how about this face? He morphed into my mother's appearance, and then, these faces aren't too bad either. And then, he even changed into Persephone and Hades. I swung my fist one more time, but my whole body was flung away in the opposite direction as powerful sparks danced in the air. Show me those faces one more time and I'll kill you. Fufu, I guess my pranks have indeed crossed the line. My bad. Change back, show me your true appearance. I'd love to, but I can't. I have already forgotten what my real appearance is like a long time ago. I lived my life as far too many different beings, you see. He maintained Hades's appearance and slowly blinked his eyes. When he did, fables began leaking out from behind him, fables that were somewhat familiar. On that day, the world's most ancient demon ascended in awe. I was a king of a demon world once upon a time. All the archangels of Eden ceaselessly worshipped him. I was also the Messiah to the archangels. Cold sweat trickled down my back. These fables, they were stories that I had heard before. The vanished great demon king, the Messiah of Eden, I also sensed founding fables of other myth-level nebulas from him, too. Emperor S. Pangu, Olympus S. Cronus. Hairs began standing up all over my body. This existence before my eyes was on a completely different realm compared to every other myth-grade constellation I had encountered so far. The oldest existence in this world. I remained tense while gripping the unbreakable faith, even tighter. All of those things, they were your doing. Even Eden, the demon world, all of them. Is that what you want to tell me? My words prompted the Dakibai king to vigorously shake his head. No, in the end, everything is simply reincarnated from the old stories. We are all nothing more than a part of the massive tale reincarnating itself. You, me. He was now staring at the flow of star stream in the distance. The sky where stars had fallen was spreading out in emptiness. That sky resembled a huge wall. The final wall that seemingly stretched on forever. This world was, in the end, a story taking place within that vast, endless wall. I saw faint stars falling down like ink spilt during scribbling. So many stars had fallen by now, yet there were still some remaining up there. Stars that couldn't be seen unless one took a closer look. I remembered the names of those stars, and that reaffirmed what I came here to do. Release my companions. They are just the means to an end that served their purpose. What meaning is there for you if I released them? They are my everything. The Dakibai king slowly approached me. Han Suyong used midday tryst to talk to me as she stood at my side. Kim Dakya. She tightened the tattered bandages around her arm and began rousing up the last bits of her fighting spirit. I'll count to 3. We subdue him together on the signal. 1, 2. Stop whispering amongst yourselves. I can hear you clearly. We stood there frozen stiff and exchanged glances. All settings found in Starstream had to go through the Dakibai king first. In other words, there was no sentence in this world that he couldn't read. Han Suyong and I, gripping my hilt tightly, glared at him. Now that our plan had been outed, whatever we did couldn't be called a sneak attack anymore. The Dakibai king stared at us as if he was greatly amused, before slowly extending his hand towards me. The successor of the stories, only you have arrived here at the perfect timing. Wah, son of a bitch, can't you see that I'm also? Along with the tsu-cha-cha-chut noise, Han Suyong's voice disappeared. Trapped inside what looked like a water tank, she began pounding on the transparent walls surrounding her. You have cleared all the main scenarios. You will be recorded in the cosmos-spanning unified starstream. Accompanying the system messages was a sudden rise in the status of my existence. You've already shown the world such a cool fable, so how come you're still stuck in the old school mentality? You are in possession of the noble walls fragment, so I need to ask why you can't detach yourself from this world and watch it from afar. The owner of the voice seemed to be criticizing me. His awe of all these stories could clearly be felt within the depths of that very voice. He gazed at the wall near his position. No, more correctly, he seemed to be imagining a certain something beyond the wall itself. There is no meaning in the things you treasure. This world is simply a story dedicated to the great, noble existence. Everything in this world is nothing more than a fleeting daydream to the noble existence. The great, noble existence's daydream, was it? Is the final wall, recording the dreams of that existence. Correct. I figured out who that existence was, the instigator of all these tragedies. I recalled the first fable I heard when entering this place. The universe in the beginning was one. The first one. The existence who regressed Yu Younghyuk and also gave birth to all the myths in this world. Is that bastard TLS 123. Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 3 Fin. Chapter 507, Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 4. TLS 123. The Dakibai king's expression as he murmured to himself looked rather strange. Bluish sparks were dancing on top of his lips that trembled as if he was suffering from some kind of lag. I changed my question. I'm asking if that guy is the author of this world. The Dakibai King tilted his head before replying. Rather than an author, you could say that the most ancient dream is much closer to being a reader. It's not an existence that writes stories for someone else. It's lazy and can be quite greedy, you see. The most ancient dream is TLS 123. If that's true, then who had been sending me the text files? The author responsible for writing the novel I had read for over 10 years, just who? You seem to be quite curious about the beginning of everything. However, there is no meaning in trying to guess it. Doesn't matter how this world came about, if there is no one to look at it, then it's the same thing as this world not existing in the first place. The Dakibai King stared at the star stream's universe. Blinding fragments of fables rode on the stream of cosmos and flowed to somewhere. Wherever his gaze stopped, the fragments repeatedly created meanings only to lose them again. I shifted my own gaze towards Yu Yonghyuk suspended in the air with chains wrapped around him. The empty star stream's universe could be seen behind him. There are things that exist without being seen. The darkness in the universe was simply too wide and expansive. Its vastness couldn't be crossed even with the speed of light. However, that light would eventually arrive at its destination. Unable to see, it didn't mean nothing existed there. There were some things that emitted light where no one was around. Faint starlights could be spied within the deep darkness of the space. Stars that rose up among the darkness, stars that hadn't lost themselves yet. The light from those stars became fables, became sentences. As those sentences were lowered on top of the final wall, the already closed story's door opened up again. The abyssal black flame dragon raised itself up as black blood trickled out from its whole body. The moment I saw that sentence, I gasped out loud. The sentences soon became video footages. Not too long afterwards, I saw the abyssal black flame dragon raise its body up within the devastated battlefield. Han Soo-young was right. Although he had lost the powers of the apocalypse dragon, after the stage transformation came undone, he was still none other than the black flame dragon. The great sage, heaven's equal floating in the skis of a different world, opened his tired eyes, and the great sage was still engaged in a bitter struggle against the surviving constellations among the thunderclaps continuously going off. The final great good was forging her way towards the end of the good and evil. And Uriel, too, she was wielding her flames of conflagration to brighten the darkened night skis of Star Stream. No, they do not exist if no one is there to see them. Along with that declaration, the fable footage scattered away. I unknowingly reached out towards the fable, scattering in vain. The Dakibai King addressed me as if to mock my actions. There is nothing more futile than a story continuing on when no one's reading it. Everything is created the moment they are observed. That's how this universe has been constructed. If no one observes it, that fable can't prove its existence. They definitely do exist. You still wish to see what happens next. Starstream is waiting for your decision. The final wall is waiting for your decision. The whole world was waiting for my answer. I hesitated with what to say. Han Soo-young was still struggling within the transparent walls. Will I be able to see what I wanted if this fable continues on? The Dakibai King chuckled as if he could understand my hesitation. The final wall viciously shuddered about. Sentences were flowing above the wall, as if it was providing a free service. The fable was lazily being reproduced once more. The great sage, abyssal black flame dragon, and Uriel began fighting again. Hey, flame dragona, don't you dare to cry because your Nuna is no longer here. Keek, you're too quick to give up, Archangel. I still have one arm left that I haven't used yet. But it looks like that arm been already sliced off, black flame dragon. This body of mine is perfectly fine without an arm, you dumb monkey. The good and evil constellations, and one that was neither, had gathered together and were participating in the final battle. While watching that spectacle, the Dakibai King addressed me. Your fable was truly amazing. Even the greatest great fable Starstream decided to side with you. Although many parts of your epic are still unfilled, it's more than enough to stand as the foundation for the beginning of a new world. I didn't continue my story just to become something like that. Fables were shining brightly behind the constellations. Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, is continuing on with its storytelling. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, is continuing on with its storytelling. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, is continuing on with its storytelling. Those were our great fables. Fables were Kim Dakya Company's alone. Those that watched a certain story for a long time would eventually emit the same light as the story itself. Constellations that had watched our story were now emitting the same light as us. That is the end of the story you have created. The black flame dragon roared out viciously as its tail was cut off. Uriel's broken conflagration was scattering away like ash. The great sage, Heaven's equal, swung his broken Rui Jingu bang towards the Emperor's constellations. The sentences written on the final wall were steadily losing their light. I reached out towards that light. Su-jut-jut-jut. You don't have the qualification to interfere with the final wall. Pain rushed in from my fingertips. Sparks had scorched them pitch black. I gritted my teeth and shouted out, I do have the right to control that story. I have already cleared the main scenario. The reward for the last scenario was the final wall. The Dakibai King smiled. Indeed, you do have the right. However, you don't have the authority to change that story. Doing that will violate the probability. I stared at the sentences floating up on the final wall in real time and unleashed my true voice. Stop that story right now. All the fables I had compiled until now were screeching out. It wasn't too late. For Uriel, Black Flame Dragon, and the Great Sage too, they were still alive. Hades, our Black is here. It could be changed if it's right now. Those flowing sentences, they could be fixed. I could grab the ends of the unfinished sentences and write something else over them. Do you wish to save them? The Dakibai King asked. I too was like you once upon a time. The world he had been living in spread out from behind his back. A planet I wasn't familiar with appeared. The scenario was underway on that planet. I too had experienced horrible misfortunes, tragedies that no single existence could ever handle alone. By the time tragedies no longer felt like tragedies to me, I found myself arriving in this place. Like a dam bursting open, a portion of the wall rained down on me. The enormous story held in the final wall's embrace began flooding in towards me. Su-jut-jut-jut-jut-ju. My mind felt like it was breaking down. The stories that I already knew, and those that I didn't, fables of the whole universe was accumulating within my soul. The fourth wall is violently resisting. The fourth wall is protecting your crumbling mind. The deaths I had experienced and the deaths I had witnessed were overlapping with each other. Why did so many bad things happen to you? These stories that could easily be categorized as misfortunes began crushing down inside my head. Do not get drunk in the fables, because this is merely one of the countless world lines you will create in the future after all. Little by little, the emotion of sadness grew dull. Lamentation and despair, too. All these emotions of sorrow were lumped into one clay-like mass and became something that couldn't be differentiated. So many misfortunes exist in this world. So, is there a reason to feel sorrow for every single one of them? Far too many things would grow stale eventually. You asked me who was the author of this world. You can be that existence. The Dakibai King continued on. If you wish to save them, you must acknowledge the fact that everything you love has no meaning, that the already written fables are simply illusions that can be changed easily, and that they are just shadows of the great, noble daydream. Along with the Dakibai King's whisper, the great fable's probability began shifting. Become the architect of the brand new world, so that you can lead the next generation of Starstream. It was an incredibly tempting offer. If I accepted the Dakibai King's suggestion and become the new architect of the star stream, then I'd be able to save everyone. I'd get to save this world line by rewriting all these fables. And there was only one price to pay for that salvation: to give up loving that story. It was then someone grabbed my hand. It was soaked in blood as if it had been hitting something for a while. It was a hand of someone who had been writing stories for a very long time. Wake up, Wilja, you are not a writer. When did she escape from the transparent walls? Han Suyong spoke to me while tearing the bandages with her teeth and wrapping them around her fists again. No, you're a reader who promised to become the first reader of my novel. At the end of her words, fables exploded out from her entire figure. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has begun its storytelling. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. The sentences written on the final wall began growing restless. Incarnation, Han Suyong, is activating her attribute. Even if there are lots of tragedies in the world, a sad thing is still sad, you dumbass. The moment Han Suyong slammed down on the floor, a portion of fable clinging onto the final wall tumbled down. The Dakibai King's eyes grew wider. The wall, you dare. He couldn't finish what he wanted to say. Because someone's hand broke past the gap of the wall where the fables had fallen down. It was a smooth, pale-skinned hand, a hand of a certain someone who was more righteous and stronger than anyone I knew. She's right, sorrow is still sorrow, just like how happiness is still happiness. The wall that decides samsara is distorting the gap in the final wall. Yu Sang-ah and her refreshing smile was escaping from the wall. Shin Yu-seung and Ye Gil-yong sticking close to her side could be seen, as well. Ajasi. Hyung. The rift Yu Sang-ah created spread out wider and wider, and eventually even reached the wall on the other side. And the voices of people I knew well could be heard coming from beyond that wall. The wall of impossible communication is raising the volume of the inaudible voice. Demonking of Salvation. It was Jang Hyung's voice. Along with crumbling noises, something small popped out from the opposite wall's gap. It was Kiajio's. You pathetic fool, did you get swallowed by a measly little fable? Soon afterwards, noises akin to a bulldozer flattening the ground resounded out as a man-sized hole appeared in that gap. The wall that decides good and evil is re-establishing the boundary between good and evil. Dakya SSI, we came to find you. It was Hyunseong and Jiang Huiwan. The gap where my companions popped out rapidly recovered. Stories recorded on the final wall were quickly filling it up, and the stories of the stars began streaming again above the wall. Dakya SSI, just what is? Hyunseong SSI, over there. Jiang Huiwan's voice prompted all my companions to look at the final wall. Stories of the constellations still fighting inside the closed-off cabin was being displayed there. It was a hellish landscape where the dead easily outnumbered the living. Uriel was kneeling down, and the abyssal black flame dragon was collapsing. The great sage was fighting right until the very end to protect them. Stand up, Makni's story hasn't ended yet. Sentences continued to just stream by. At this rate they would all die. Uriel, abyssal black flame dragon, even the great sage, they would all die. While still being subjected to intense pain, I reached out towards them. Pain severe enough to almost completely take over my soul meant I couldn't speak nor use my true voice. Sinopid. The fourth wall is speaking in your stead. Sinop th at Sin Oriafar Om Khan T Nuing on. Companions dashed towards the final wall. Even if I didn't say anything to them, they already knew what they needed to do. That story wasn't over yet. If only we could prevent the next sentences from being written. Sujajajachu. The violent aftermath storm burned away at the companions. The Dakibai King's power was suppressing them. Despite that, they didn't stop. They endured against the blinding sparks dancing all over their bodies and walked forward a step at a time in their own paces. All fables of Kim Dakya Company refused to be recorded on the final wall. Fables we had created were speaking up now. The Dakibai King muttered as if he was replying to them. I see. So you still wish to carry on with the scenario, is that it? He then stared at me as if he was rather amused by this. The moment I met his gaze, goosebumps broke out all over my skin. The Dakibai King was the strongest existence in this world line. No myth-grade constellation could ever contend with this creature. Everything within Star Stream was nothing more than some toys to him after all. With a single wave of his hand, the new scenario's contents floated on the final wall. Star Stream, final scenario is being reset. Star Stream's final scenario will be CRACK. The streaming sentence came to a sudden stop. A single sword was stabbing into the spot where the sentence had been cut off. The aura containing the ominous power of chaos was disrupting the order of the sentence. And then a new sentence was generated instead. The sole existence who had seen the end of this world, after wandering for the inordinate amount of time. The broken chains clanged in the empty air. Shadows from countless regression turns were overlapping on top of a certain black coat, as if thousands of afterimages were gathering as one. Right at that moment, I realized that my judgment was wrong. There is one person who did. A being who had already killed the Dakibai King before. Fable, Hellscape of Eternity, has begun its storytelling. Episode 97, The Star That Can't Be Seen 4, Finn. Chapter 508, Episode 98, Have You Protected All That You Were Supposed to Protect? 1. A man named Yu Yonghyuk was there. From the 0th turn all the way to 1863rd. The history compiled by Yu Yonghyuk overlapped with the ends of his coat and whipped about wildly. As if to speak up for his fable, his words floated up on the final wall. I will never forget, not even one thing. Fable, comrade of life and deaths, special effect is currently in activation. The fables of the third turns Yu Yonghyuk and the secretive plotter were resonating together. Terrifyingly resplendent powers of chaos extended out from the tip of the dark heavenly demon sword, buried deeply in the wall. The entire wall seemed to grow restless from the disorderly aura of chaos. That was obvious, though. His story should be occupying the most important part of this wall, after all. The protagonist of the 3 ways to survive a destroyed world, Yu Yonghyuk. This whole world couldn't even have gotten started without him in the first place. The Dakibai King spoke up as if to ridicule him. Oh, the puppet of the most ancient dream. Your film is truly lengthy and extensive. He sounded as if he already had predicted this appearance. No one could have accompanied you in your boring and unwieldy story, even if it was the most ancient dream. Sujajajut. Yu Yonghyuk slowly blinked, and the sage eye was unleashed along with a radiant golden light. His eye glowed brightly as if it had absorbed every starlight existing in this world. The owner of that eye spoke up. Have I come too early this time as well? The moment I heard the secretive plotter, I recalled a certain memory I saw through the disconnected film theory. A memory from the 1863rd turn when he encountered the Dakibai King. Oh dear unfortunate puppet, you have arrived too early. You can't complete this universe. The Dakibai King tilted his head as that memory was transmitted to him in real time and muttered out, Is that what happened? I see, the me of the different world line told you such a thing. Your manner of speech is different from the one I met. Just like how your regression turns aren't the same, I too am different. The Dakibai King shrugged his shoulders as if he found something rather amusing. Then, he yanked out Yu Yonghyuk's dark heavenly demon sword and threw it back. The latter caught the flying sword with his bare hand. Only the sword scar remained on the final wall like a cursor. Soon, though, the scar was gradually forced close, and sentences appeared on the wall's surface. However, all these world lines existed for the sake of treading the same path. The Dakibai King addressed Yu Yonghyuk while sounding immensely proud of this story. The completion of the great, noble world is at hand. You shall be able to fulfill your long-cherished wish now. I knew very well what Yu Yonghyuk's wish was. Great Fable, Pilgrim of the Lonely Apocalypse, has begun its storytelling. and that was to be freed from the chains of this horrifying curse. The 1863rd turns Yu Jung-hyuk only lived on for that very purpose. However, his aim wasn't only that. The secretive plotter turned his head to look at me. The meaning behind that stare was rather obvious. He was telling me not to forget the deal I made with him. I shall kill the culprit of all these worlds. The Dakibai king read that sentence floating above the final wall and muttered out, "Kill, is it? How amusing. Do you still believe such a thing is possible?" Of course it is, and to make it possible. A pair of swords were now held in his hands. The pitch-black blade of the dark heavenly demon sword was now joined by the chillingly pale blade of heaven's shaking sword. "You bastard need to disappear first." Along with a loud kaboom, sparks began pounding the entire wall as if to break it down. An explosion of light occurred right afterwards, revealing two figures locked in combat midair. I saw the sturdy barrier-like wall of the fable surrounding the Dakibai king. He was an existence that used the oldest stories in this world as weapons. Great fable, First Messiah, has begun its storytelling. The fable in possession of the master of Nebula Eden was now streaming out from his fingertips. Sentences tightly coagulating scattered sacred light around. The light from a great constellation was now raining down on all the creations on the ground. There was no doubt that anything touched by that status would melt away without a trace. Dakya Sasai. Yeonseong freaked out and hurriedly ran towards where I was. Forged steel extending from his body spread out to protect me and the companions. However, I simply shook my head. "There is no need, Yeonseong SSI." "Pardon." Instead of a reply, I simply pointed to the front. Even as the pulsing migraine continued to assault me, I didn't stop looking at the view unfolding before my eyes. Other stars were right. I, too, might be nothing more than a mere constellation. Maybe I endured over a dozen-plus years to witness this spectacle. Exclusive attribute, Terror of the Stars, is activating. The brilliant radiance of the Dakibai king was splitting apart. A man wearing a black coat was using two swords to defend against the light of Messiah, capable of ending all evil in this world. The fables on the wall melted down as the light touched them. The secretive plotter, Yu Jung-hyuk, was walking forward step by step while scything past that light. Sweat drops formed and dripped down from the end of his chin, and the edges of dark heavenly demon sword and heaven shaking sword grew increasingly dull from the light, yet he didn't back away, not even once. This caused the Dakibai king's expression to shift gradually. As expected, how about this then? Great fable, First Evil, has begun its storytelling. The first evil, that was the fable of Baal, the great demon king who had ascended to heaven. It was the absolute power that no good in this world could ever dare to oppose. Now carrying the entirety of the demon world on its back, the Dakibai king dropped a pitch-black bolt of lightning on Yu Jung-hyuk. It was the thunderclap from the corrupted heaven that no archangel could withstand. Yisyalhwa cried out in the distance, "Jung-hyuk SSI." Yu Jung-hyuk didn't avoid the incoming lightning bolt. No, he instead raised his sword up like a lightning rod and faced the attack head-on. That wasn't the end, however. The stage transformation is activating. Through the stage transformation, souls of demon kings were being revived. There were some that died by our hands, while some were killed off by the apocalypse dragon. All demon kings had been summoned to the battlefield once more by the first evil, and they were now howling towards Yu Jung-hyuk and me. Gualia. The weapons thrown by the demon kings were enveloped in the malevolent magical energy, creating a purple-colored storm of lightning. It was so powerful that not even a myth-grade constellation would be able to withstand it. As the lightning flooded in, Yu Jung-hyuk's pale face was illuminated like an evil apparition. He remained utterly calm even as the ominous storm of status raged on. Just like someone who had been waiting for this very moment for a long time. "They are all bastards that I've killed before." Exclusive attribute Demon King Slayer is activating. Yu Jung-hyuk leapt into the air and marched forward while deflecting the incoming weapons. Everywhere his swords drew arcs, fables of evil crumbled down. Like a monster born only to destroy, he swung his swords again and again. Every single one of his sword strikes contained the resentment of the worlds he had lived in. Su-jut-jut-jut. A huge rift was opening up in the corrupted skis of the demon world. The martial prowess powerful enough to dissolve the stage transformation all by himself. The monster created by Starstream was now working towards destroying Starstream itself. Gyuak. The blade of dark heavenly demon sword cut off the head of the revived Black Mane Lion Marbas, while the heaven-shaking sword trajectory pierced past the heart of the merciless hunter going against heaven's will, Barbados. No demon king could announce themselves as a king in front of this man. The Dakibai king growled and shouted out as if he too had finally acknowledged the threat. "You arrogant puppet, you are not the protagonist of this world line." At the same time, the surrounding terrain began changing again. Great Fable Starstream game system has begun its storytelling. The stage transformation is activating. The wall's appearance was changing, as if pixels were breaking apart. Yu Jung-hyuk's figure seemingly grew smaller and smaller. The path he needed to tread became a maze, as if he was now trapped within the maze of Daedalus. Even a monster with a large mouth chasing after him could be seen, too. Automated turrets suddenly popping from here, and there began firing at him, while the ground his feet landed on morphed into a deep quagmire. It was as if he had entered a video game. Yu Jung-hyuk was laughing. Exclusive attribute, Ruler of Games, is activating. He overcame the exceedingly simple traps and flung himself forward like an arrow. He tore the approaching monster's head off, then proceeded to utterly destroy the maze's walls. As if he already knew the method of clearing this world, he didn't even permit a single attack to land on him. Applicable stage cannot deal with the target's status. The maze collapsed, and Yu Jung-hyuk was already standing right before the Dakibai king. The latter's eyes were now dyed in the colors of fluster. Is that all? It was only obvious why the secretive plotter would win against the Dakibai king, however. His whole life existed solely to fight and win against Starstream. He must have killed the Dakibai king in a similar manner during the portion of the original I didn't get to read. The latter was hastily retreating, his eyes now shifting towards me. What is Yu Jung-hyuk's weakness? The moment I read that sentence floating above the final wall, the back of my neck grew icy cold. The sights of a different world line were projected onto the Dakibai king's irises. Memories not from this world, but another world line was currently entering him. He stopped looking at me as if he had found the right answer, and with a chilling smile, shifted his gaze back to Yu Jung-hyuk. "Oh, dear puppet, is your mind as sharp as your sword, I wonder? The king of stories is forcibly reproducing your fable. The stage transformation is activating temporarily. The similarity of the surrounding terrain is greatly enhancing the level of stage's reproduction." Corpses of demon kings were strewn about everywhere. Yu Jung-hyuk and his devastated expression standing on top of dead constellations and demon kings was now slowly taking in the surroundings. The final world he used to live in was now unfolding in this place. There was no way he didn't recognize this world. It was none other the secretive plotter himself who had sent me to that place after all. The 1863rd regression turn, the last world of the ways of survival. The Dakibai king approached Yu Jung-hyuk like an encroaching shadow as the latter dazedly looked up at the sky. No, he was no longer the Dakibai king. With every step he took, his face and his silhouette changed. The pale cheeks, two eyes gleaming like stars, were now looking at him. The white coat perfectly matching mine was dancing in the wind. Do you remember it? Back in the 33rd regression turn, what Yi Jai-hai said after clearing the 40th scenario. A voice exactly the same as mine was now speaking up. Sparks danced in the air as Yu Jung-hyuk's body froze up stiffly. The Dakibai king easily reached out and grabbed hold of Yu Young-hyuk's collars before continuing on. Now remember, you weren't always unhappy, right? In all the regression turns, there were always moments of happiness, even if they didn't last long. Both the heaven-shaking sword and the dark heavenly demon sword trembled powerfully, and in the midst of the tremor they drooped powerlessly. The regression depression. That was the only weakness of Yu Young-hyuk, who had repeatedly regressed for a very long time. In the 173rd turn, you managed to protect Earth for a pretty long time. You got to see Yi Jai-hai receive her high school diploma, and you even got to see Yi Clhwa smile with another's child in her arms. The light in Yu Young-hyuk's eyes was wavering. It wasn't despair that could defeat Yu Young-hyuk. Small feather-like memories settled down inside his head one by one. The Dakibai King was using the exact same method I relied on back then. The breathing got harder, and the lungs were getting tighter. A man drowning in water would sink even deeper under the surface from the weight of a mere feather. I couldn't afford to idly watch on anymore. I shouted at Yu Young-hyuk, telling him to wake up and not to fall for such an illusion. However, my voice couldn't reach them, as if a non-conductive barrier was set up between us, and the Dakibai King was smiling away, perhaps to mock this entire story. Yu Young-hyuk, have you protected all that you wanted to protect? Slowly, Yu Young-hyuk's knees sank down. I roused the status of fables. I needed to undo that stage transformation right now, but how should I? Grab. There was a hand still tightly clutching mine. It was Han Soo-young. That's not a battle you can interfere in. But if he's left alone, even a star that can't be seen still emits light. You said that right. A star that can't be seen. Her words made me look back at Yu Young-hyuk once more. His gaze being lowered had come to a stop. Blinding sparks were completely enveloping him. Su-cha-cha-cha-chu. Something was waking up his fatting consciousness. Great fable, ones that remember the apocalypse, has begun its storytelling. That was a fable I wasn't aware of. As the sparks lessened gradually, several silhouettes revealed themselves. Now that I took a closer look, Yu Young-hyuk wasn't alone. No, 4 others were standing beside him. A tall man, a young man with blonde hair, a girl with a ponytail, and finally, he couldn't protect anyone. That's why he now stands in this place. An archangel with blindingly pure wings. Astonishment quickly dyed the Dakibai King's expression. The fable from the destroyed 999th turn was now burning brightly like the conflagration of end times on the edges of the archangel's blade. Because he believes there are still things left to protect. Episode 98. Have you protected all that you were supposed to protect? 1 Fin. Chapter 509. Have you protected all that you were supposed to protect? 2. The Dakibai King's brows quivered. The fables from the 999th regression turn were now looming before him. The fables discarded by Starstream had begun telling their stories one by one. They were waking Yu Young-hyuk up from the depth of regression depression. The Dakibai King frowned deeply next. Why are you here? Did you not make a deal with me? You don't have a pretext to help him. Sentences began floating up above the final wall. We made a deal with the Dakibai King, you see. If we destroy this world line, he will send us back. He will get in touch with your sponsor, the most ancient dream, and... Those were the words of the 999th turn, Yi Jai-hai. The Dakibai King spoke once more. It was I who summoned you all to this world. Do you wish to be cast out of the world line again? I ask you, do you wish to taste the everlasting pain while wandering the horrifying gap between dimensions without an end in sight? His words continued on as if to threaten them. This Yu Young-hyuk is the enemy you've been searching for. He's the very culprit who destroyed your world line, the one who thrust your fables into misery. There was a slight hint of agitation on the expressions of the outer gods. The Dakibai King was right. Just like how it was with Yu Young-hyuk, they too came this far to settle the score from the world they used to live in. It was then someone opened his mouth. What dogshit are you yapping on about? It's you, asshole, who dropped us into this damn game, isn't it? If the scenarios didn't start in the first place, would I even be standing here doing this shit? The monarch of the great abyss, 999th turns Kim Nam-woon spoke with a thuggish attitude, as if he had already finished making up his mind. Truly incredible power of chaos was being unleashed from his entire figure. Great fable, delusional design, has begun its storytelling. Q, it's been so long since we fought together. Kim Nam-woon cackled as he undid the bandages from his hands. He was a monster that even surpassed his own sponsor, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. His pitch-black obsidian hand, filled to the brim with thicker, more evil aura than anything Han Soo-young could ever produce, began sucking in the star stream-esque night. Great fable, heart sealing the sorrow, has begun its storytelling. Right behind him, there was another man raising his huge figure up as well. It was the 999th turns Yeon-seong, the king of Silver Light Heart. The completed fable metal armor wrapped around his entire figure. Dakibai King, I'm excluded from that deal since I have never agreed to it. Next up, the master of the sunken island. 999th turns Yijai summoned her gigantic battleship up in the air. Great fable, wanderer of the eternal horizon, has begun its storytelling. The atmosphere of the great ocean could be felt from her twin dragon sword. She wordlessly unsheathed her sword and protected Yu Yonghyok's right side. With that, the king's decision became clear. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, is forcibly activating. Their thoughts and determination were being transmitted to me in full. They all hated the secretive plotter. However, that hatred was born out from the deep-seated yearning they all held. No one treasured Yu Yonghyok as much as them in any of the universes out there. It was all thanks to Yu Yonghyok that they got to reach this far. To make sure they would reach here, the 999th turns Yu Yonghyok sacrificed everything of him. His arm was cut off, his legs were torn off, he lost both of his eyes, and in the end, he even sacrificed his life too. It was Yu Yonghyok who saved them and killed them. They only lived for Yu Yonghyok. How could people like them ever forget about him? The wrath that had to be chained within the sinking island, the sorrow that could only be endured after turning your heart into steel, the pain that could only be forgotten by throwing yourself into the abyss. Great fable, Flame of Eternity, has begun its storytelling. And the ache that could only be appeased by burning oneself away. They repeatedly connected the film that threatened to be cut off at any time, and eventually reached the final pages of the story. Step aside, Dakibai King. We only want one thing. The 999th turns Uriel, the living flame, spoke up, and that is to witness the end we didn't get to confirm back in our world line. At the end of her words, the flames of conflagration moved. Quack-quack-quack-quack. The hell flame that utterly devastated the Engai's forest was now burning the interior of the wall. Almost at the same time, the right hand of the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon stabbed into the Dakibai King's thigh. Ha, let's kill a Dakibai for a change. Kim Nam-woon's madness-filled stigma sliced past the time and space, destroyed fables, and aimed at the Dakibai King's figure. The two exchanged the exact amount of fables during their attacks and defenses. Weapons created from the delusion grew out of Kim Nam-woon's right arm, while star relics summoned by the Dakibai King appeared from several spots of the wall and blocked off the former's weapons. Tsujujujut. The final wall was the location where the Dakibai King's fable could display the greatest level of power. With the stage being what it was, the direction of the battle soon flowed disadvantageously for Kim Nam-woon. Oh, the spear that rips the oceans apart and draws the borders in the seas. Oh, the arrow that shot down the eye of the sun. Sentences leaking out from several spots on the wall soon became reality. Shujashashuk. The star relics matched the Dakibai King's signal and flew in, turning the entire figure of the monarch of the great abyss into Swiss cheese. A spear stabbed into his thigh, while the arrow pierced into his arm. However, even as the pitch-black fable dripped out from him, Kim Nam-woon was grinning. Go Tikwan Hyun-seong. Along with Kim Nam-woon's cry, a figure taking the spot behind him rose up. Kwadujujudu. It was the 999th turn's Yi Hyun-seong. His powerful, sturdy arms wrapped tightly around the Dakibai King, then forged steel occupying the space grew out from his entire body. As the powerful sparks exploded, the steel tightly secured the Dakibai King's arms and legs. Jaihayu. At the end of the 999th turn, Yi Hyun-seong's signal, the master of the sunken island, made her move. Load the cannon. A massive battleship floating in the night sky could be spied within the wall's gap created by the impact with the arc. Along with a powerful whirlpool swirling about, something was being loaded in front of the ship. The status emitted from there was more than enough to blow up a planet in its entirety. When taking a closer look, it was not a shell that had been loaded into the gigantic cannon. Fire! And while issuing a huge explosion noise, a shooting star fired out from the ship. It was the living flame, descending like a star with a blindingly bright tail behind her back. She had willingly become a bullet and now was flying straight at the Dakibai King. The 999th turn, Uriel shot forward in a shocking turn of speed while melting everything getting in her way. The 999th turn's fable concentrated on the tip of her sword began burning up violently. It's not only the conquering king that have killed you before. This was the method the 999th turn's characters used to clear the final pages. The incandescent sun shattered the wall's exterior and advanced forward. Fables clinging onto the final wall writhed in pain from that incredible heat. This was the attack that no one in this world line could possibly defend against. Yet the Dakibai King was doing exactly that against such an attack. Krielek. The Dakibai King's eyes glowed sharply under the hellish heat. Audiobook. Countless stigmata engraved on his body screeched out. They were texts seemingly taken from the final wall. Great fables began directing their exaltation towards them. Even the fables in my possession were getting agitated as well. The modifier king of the stories was not just for a show. The king of the stories that existed at the peak of Starstream. His face looked noble, evil, beautiful, and sorrowful all at the same time. Once upon a time he too was a human. The weapons pouring out from the final wall collided with the flames of conflagration, and he was a demon. The ash-colored fable leaking out from the Dakibai King's horn stopped the approaching Uriel's movement. He was a savior and the divine light emitted from white wings restored the Dakibai King's stamina. And eventually, an existence that became a Dakibai. The unending fables began enveloping him, as if this world couldn't end in this place. This place was not the 999th turn. I sensed the 999th turn's characters now shifting their gazes in my direction. Now make your move. You must be the one to finish it. You haven't forgotten your promise with us, yes. Unfortunately, I couldn't move. Great Fable, Guardian of the World, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Guardian of the World, is now looking at the next Guardian. Because the Dakibai King's fable was also looking directly at me. Kim Dakya, the Dakibai King shouted in my direction. Do not go against your predetermined destiny. You love the fables more than anyone in this world. I too was like you. I understand the feelings you have towards this world better than anyone in this universe. The fable extending from his body reached out towards me. Han Soo-young next to me covered my ears and growled angrily. Don't listen to him. It's not even worth it hearing him out. Jiang Hui-won and Yi Hyun-seong stood before me, while Yu Sang-ah, Shin Yu-seung, and Yi Gil-yong stood around me to protect me. And from behind my back, the howl from Yi Jai-hai's sword resounded out. All the stars in the nebula Kim Dakya company are shining brightly. However, there were some things that would become more visible the harder you tried to obscure them. Some words would become clearer the more you tried to cover them up. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, is going out of control. Black flame dragon, Godamit, open your eyes already. Kim Yushin, wake up, our Hwangsanbial is not yet. Great sage. Those were fables streaming on the final wall. Constellations were collapsing on the battlefield, where an even fiercer battle than ours was taking place. Fables were endlessly leaking out from the great sage's body, now tattered to resemble a torn rag. As if he had lost both of his eyes, his once blinding, golden gaze fiery eyes were currently not emitting any light. "But I can't see my Makni all that well." Uriel was supporting him. The archangel with both of her wings torn off held his hand and stroked the nightscape. "He's alive, there he is, still shining." The constellation still doggedly surviving, until now rushed towards them from among the chaotic night sky. The scene then changed to show Persephone embracing the fallen Hades. He was trying to say something, but she simply shook her head. "Do not worry, my ancient knight." Olympus' sun was setting above her head. All these endings became wretched sentences and rushed above the wall. These sentences were being written only for the purpose of finishing them off. "Do you not wish to save them?" I felt vomit rising up from the deepest part of my body. The Dakibai King shouted out, "The current, you can't save them. The one who loves the story can never change that very story. Can't change it because you loved it. Only the one who overcomes the story, the one who understands the trivial nature of everything, can escape from the suppression of the probability." The surrounding storm of aftermaths was growing even more vicious, accompanied by the kka gagagag noise. The power of the fables flowing out from the Dakibai King was gradually overwhelming the combined might of the 999th turn's characters. The Dakibai King tore off Yeonseong's fable medal and extended his hand in my direction. "The one single fable you have compiled is more than enough to inherit the position of Starstream. Take my hand. What you want is the same as what I want. I do not wish to see the stories of those stars be erased." His voice even sounded desperate, too. The light in his eyes and his fable all acted as proof of his sincerity. The Starstream's fable glowed brightly from his figure. The story he had been reading for a long time had eventually become a part of him. He was now the Starstream itself. He genuinely didn't want this story to end. Continue with this story. Become the protagonist of a new world line, and along with the fable you have created, continue the banquet of the most ancient dream. You are the existence born solely for that purpose. You were able to reach this far only for that purpose. While listening to those words, I began recalling all the lucky moments that happened to me so far. Starstream is looking at you. Why was the Starstream's probability so generous towards me? The Dakibai King's fable was telling me the reason for that. The lights continued to explode before my eyes. Do not forget what you truly want. You're not the last verse. No, you're the eternity. The constellations, fables streamed behind the Dakibai King. He was right. I didn't wish for those stories to end. The great sage, heaven's equal, watched the falling star and sensed his own approaching demise. I slowly turned my head around and saw Yu Younghyuk, now almost freed from the regression depression. His seemingly empty eyes were locked on me. However, there were some stories that had to end. Episode 98. Have you protected all that you were supposed to protect? 2. Finn. Chapter 510. Have you protected all that you were supposed to protect? 3. That was an old promise. I'll finish your story for you. I couldn't keep that promise during the 1863rd turn. Your black square has begun shaking unsteadily. I pushed myself up while gripping the unbreakable faith tightly. The hilt of the sword that accompanied me from beginning till now through almost all the scenarios could be felt in my hand. The tip of the sword touched the ground and sentences began rising up, sentences that I had never seen before. He was more curious about the end of this world than anyone, and more than anyone else, he wished for this world not to end. My last fable had begun. Kim Dakya. I removed Han Suyong's hands covering my ears. Her eyes were trembling. My reddened appearance was reflected in her irises. A lengthy wound was running across my cheek, wings were torn, and the Demon King's horn was broken. I was truly in a mess. And Han Suyong believed in such a mess of a man, until now and came this far. Have you made up your mind? The Dakibai King, in the center of all the exploding sparks, asked me. The beings from the 999th turn, the Outer God Kings, were doing whatever they could to fight back. The battle so far had been evenly matched, but judging from the direction of the storm of the probabilities aftermath blowing in, it should be the 999th side falling into a disadvantage in the end. That's right, I replied to the Dakibai King. I shall cross the final wall, and then meet the one behind it. The culprit of all these tragedies, the most ancient dream. I'll meet that guy and stop all of this world's tragedies. The Dakibai King grinned as if he was satisfied with my decision. Indeed, very good. That's eminently possible when you become my successor. Now come this way. Hurry and inherit the Star Stream's will. I never said I'll take you up on your offer. I activated Way of the Wind and the lightning transformation at the same time. This world's fastest movement technique was soon enveloped by the pure white electrical energy, transforming my body into a single streak of light beam. With the fastest speed I could ever produce, I shot past both the Dakibai King and the Outer Gods. The destination I chose was the deepest part of the final wall. You! I heard the stunned voice of the Dakibai King. I also saw the sentences dashing across above the final wall in the distance. The place where the abyssal black flame dragon's last scale and Uriel's last feather had fallen. I roared out in panic and dashed towards that very sentence. The place where Persephone's last teardrop had fallen. I needed to stop those sentences from finishing. Even if I saw the end of this world, I must never let those words come to an end. Perhaps he had realized my intentions. The Dakibai King was shouting out in sheer astonishment. No, stop. You are not a permitted being yet. You can't even touch that wall, let alone cross it. Tsujajajut. The moment he was finished, the storm of the probabilities aftermath suppressed my entire body. The sparks exploded with enough force to utterly crush my incarnation body right down its atoms, and for a moment there, the inside of my head blanked out from the pain. The final wall is rejecting your approach. The wall was rejecting me. It was stopping me from touching its sentences to change them, and even from crossing over it, as if I couldn't even be permitted to reach it at all. In an instant, the words on the wall widened the space and retreated to a far-off distance. Those sentences weren't Kim Dakya's. Powerful gusts of wind knocked me off my feet. I was like some words cast out to the distant, empty blankness, miserably rolling on the ground towards my rear. Then my back collided with something while issuing a loud thud. You idiot, you think you can achieve something by rushing out all alone. It was Han Suyong. I replied to her with a grin. I wasn't rushing forward alone. The Kim Dakya Company's members were running towards us from behind. I didn't want to lose anyone. I simply couldn't afford to lose anyone. Dakya SSI, keep running. Jiang Hui-1, her hour of judgment, activated, rushed towards us while scattering the reddish glow from her eyes. Yihyun-seong and Yijai-hai were positioned either side of her, while Yu Sang-ah and the kids were right behind them. Meanwhile, Jang Ha-yong and our masters were taking up the rear of the group. Take this with you, it's the last life and death pill. YCLHWA couldn't come with us because of Gong Pildu, so she threw the pillbox at us instead. I took a life and death pill, out right away, and swallowed it. My wrecked incarnation body began recovering rapidly. Stop! Along with the Dakibai King's cry, bizarre-looking creatures revealed themselves from among the context of the paragraphs recorded on the wall. They were outer gods, two beings that hadn't earned fables worthy enough to be recorded on the wall. Not all outer gods followed their kings. There definitely existed some that chose to become the Dakibai King's underlings despite possessing great powers themselves, and voluntarily worked as the slaves of the scenarios. Quack 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 quack. Stop them, if you do, I shall record your fables on the final wall. Our martial art masters discovered tentacles rushing in from all directions and unsheathed their weapons. Leave this place to us. The Breaking the Sky Saints' Breaking the Sky swordsmanship and Kiyoji's purest sword force combined into a single ray of light and engraved their sentences over the wall. Great Fable, the first Murim, has begun its storytelling. Two greatest experts of Murim stopped the tentacles, and a desperate struggle soon ensued. Unfortunately, the time they could buy was only for a fleeting moment. There were simply far too many outer gods flooding out from the context. The Dakibai King had opened up. All fables of Kim Dakya Company are emitting bright light. We couldn't afford to waste the time our masters bought for us. The wall's surface recording Uriel's and the great sage's fables had already grown that far away. There could only be one answer. We needed to approach it fast than its retreating speed. But how could we? It was right around. Then a certain paragraph floated up on the final wall. To think that a green zone is located on a wall. To begin with, people were responsible for attaching the concept of rooms on it, weren't they? I abruptly looked down at the floor we were standing on. The floor itself was another type of wall, laying in a different direction, and our footprints were left engraved on the wall we ran on. The fables we had compiled were floating up on the footprints we left behind. By the way, Dakya SSI, what are you so focused on reading just now? It was the moment when my life's genre changed. The number of people remaining in the subway cabin is 12, and there are only 3 insects inside the net. One world was dying, while a new world was being born, and I was the sole reader who knew the conclusion of this world. It was from the first scenario, back when we were trying to escape from the subway. Please select your backer. Your chosen backer will become your trusty sponsor from now on. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is disappointed in you. Constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is amused by your choice. Those were from the sponsor selection. Starlights were illuminating our feet. We began running again. The fables created the path we should be running on. Is it true that you're monopolizing the food? Stand up, everyone. The scenario has just begun after all. An arrogant tenant showed up, I see. Hyunseong SSI, do it now. Destroy everything, please. Past the battles of Jumho and Cheongmuro stations, and I'm the 9th quitter. My apologies, but may I inquire what your name is? I'm Yu Young-hyuk. The memories from the battles of the capture, the flag, and the life-and-death struggle of the prophets were remembered next. What an amusing thing this is. All this history belongs to the past, yet why have you all gathered in this place once more? That bastard is nicknamed the Tyrant King. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman, you'll be taken as a concubine if you're pretty enough, and if you're not, either you'll be killed off or become his slave. In that case, Dakyo SSI, you'll end up as a slave if you get caught. The top dog among the Soul's 7 kings was, of course, the conquering King Yu Young-hyuk. We greeted the Gwanghwamun, Battle of the Kings, and that's why I will not sit down on the absolute throne. And I destroyed the absolute throne. However, I won't permit anyone else to sit down on this throne either. Every moment had been a battle against adversity. Not one scenario was easy, and we always had to risk our lives and fight the odds. All these tragedies had become a story in the end, and we were running with that story. Fables untangling endlessly like a ball of threads soon formed a single image. That image soon morphed into a white tiger. A white tiger sporting noble whiskers and stripes was now running beside me. Fable, king of a kingless world, is seeing you off on your journey. The king of a kingless world, my nativity fable, was seeing me off. The white tiger created the path we must tread on and roared out loudly before coming to a sudden stop, as if the road from here on wasn't its to create, its yearning eyes chasing after my path. Fable, one who opposes the miracles, is seeing you off on your journey. Before long, my second fable taking on the figure of a blue hawk was flying above my head. It was the fable I earned by killing the returnee Myung Ilsang, who descended as the calamity of questions. Fable, one who scorned the storyteller, is seeing you off on your journey. Our every fable was enabling us to run on the final wall. The expressions of my companions also changed as their own fables appeared. Yeonseong hesitantly looked behind over and over again, while Shin Yuseung couldn't hold it anymore and broke down in tears. This was the road they had lived on, and the story they need to finish. Fable, one who hunted the king of disasters, is seeing you off on your journey. The fable I earned by hunting the shadow of Yamato no Orachi back in the Peaceland. A gigantic shadow of a snake was supporting the road we were running on. Every single one of them was a precious story to us. We lived all those moments to their fullest, and that's why all of us were here now. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Our fables lost their strengths and collapsed as the storm of aftermath grew harsher and harsher. Fable, one who murdered the outer god, is seeing you off on your journey. A fable resembling a massive squid protected us from the aftermath storm. Fable, demon king of salvation, has begun telling its last story. With every ounce of energy I could muster, I wielded the unbreakable faith. We shook off the incoming outer gods and dashed towards the final wall. The fables of the constellations were still telling their stories in the distance even now. The flame of conflagration fell out from Uriel's hand. In that last moment she looked up at a certain star shining in the night sky. And then, it was still not too late. Uriel, the abyssal black flame dragon, and even the great sage, they were all still alive. This story could be changed. The final wall is not permitting your approach. We only had to go a little bit further. Access prevention process has been initialized. And then our steps came to a halt. Right before our eyes stood thin, transparent walls layered one after another. Each wall was made up with incredible density. We struck it several times, but its sturdiness couldn't be broken through the powers of individual fables. We could now see the outer gods ignoring our masters and rushing towards us. The Dakibai king seemed to be relieved now as he shouted something at us too. I ignored them all and looked up at the night sky. All the stars of the universe had dimmed, but that didn't mean every single of them did. A ripple-like thing spread out from a certain spot in the night sky. The first one to realize what was going on was Han Soo-young. She rubbed her eyes hard and muttered out, "He's way too late." The front section of a train could be seen dashing towards us. Surya's sun train was rushing in our direction, as the ark's debris could be seen bouncing off its hull. Constellation, supreme god of light, is incarnating into the final scenario's location. Apologies for my tardiness, demon king of salvation. He had finally attained the status of a myth grade, and arrived in the stage by crossing the night sky. Not at all, you are just in time. Great fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. Finally, the condition for the beginning/Gi Chinese letter had been satisfied. The stage transformation is activating. Episode 98. Have you protected all that you were supposed to protect? 3. Fin.